Okay, we're live. Hey, how you doing? This is John. Welcome to John's Long Box. I'm here with Bryan Baugh, the creator of Wulf and Batsy from Alterna Comics.
That's me.
Oh, okay. All right, you paused. All right. So we're here because Bryan just messaged me late last night and today. You want to talk tomorrow night? No, I never say no to Bryan. You know, it's a pleasure. You're one of the first people I ever spoke with, and but kind of itching to talk to you again. So this is a lot of fun. So thanks a lot for coming down to my channel.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So anybody? We got 2 viewers. Hey, could as usual, I always ask if you give me a thumbs up or just let us know that we sound okay, so we're not just talking to me and Bryan talking to each other. But anyway, for those of you who do not know, Alterna Comics is having their one of their campaigns. What season is it? I'm blanking. It's the summer or the spring.
I think
campaign?
they're calling it the August campaign this time. Yeah, I mean technically it's the summer campaign,
Okay.
but I think they're calling it August campaign.
And you have 2 comics this time around, right?
Yep. It's the first 2 chapters of a new story.
Wulf. It's a whole new story. So Bryan is the creator, writer, artist, and I was about to say colorer, but you are the colorer. You put the black and the whites in Wulf and Batsy.
Well,
you do everything for Wulf and Batsy.
Yeah, I color the covers. I color the covers. Yeah.
Oh, you do color the covers. Oh, I was kind of being silly, but you do color the covers.
Oh yeah.
Now, out of curiosity, do you color? Is it all computer, or do you color with pen and inks like the old-fashioned way?
Well, the whole thing is drawn traditionally with pen and ink or ink brush, but the one thing that is digital is the coloring, and then the lettering I do digitally, except for the logo. The logo is hand drawn, pretty much, but yeah. For the logo, I took an existing font on Photoshop, and then I drew over it and warped it, and also added to it to make kind of the wolf mouth and the bat wings, and kind of added some little jagged points on it and things like that. But you have one?
Just reach it over.
I got one behind me.
Yeah, oh yeah, I always try to. His Wulf and Batsy #1. So those are. Can see what he's talking about.
That one stands out pretty good. Yeah, so to create the logo, so to create the logo, I took an existing font, and then I just messed with it and drew over it, and so the basic shapes of the letters were from that. But then yeah, there you go, decorated it. Yeah, so took several tries to get that right. I'm not the world's greatest letterer, but yeah, so it's pretty much almost entirely done traditionally, the old-fashioned way, but I do use Photoshop to do the color on the covers and then the lettering.
Okay. I was just thinking, have you ever seen that movie PCU? That old college movie with Jeremy Piven?
Yeah.
The guy. Yeah, I saw it a long time, but it just when the guy's about to go see a band, I forget the name of the band, but he's wearing the shirt, and Jeremy Piven goes, "You're going to go see that band with the shirt on? Don't be that guy." And I just realized I'm talking to creative Wulf and Batsy with the wolf. I'm that guy.
Well, I always do that shamelessly. I'll wear the shirt to anything I'm a fan of.
Yeah.
If I'm going to a comic book convention and I'm really looking forward to seeing a particular creator, I gotta wear that shirt. There's times when you're allowed to be a nerd.
Yeah. You know, I think. Yes. Yeah. I know. Back in the 80s and 90s, I was like totally into punk rock and alternative bands, and I had to be the first to discover the new band. And so, but going to the shows with the shirt on was kind of like, oh, you showing like, I don't know how eager you are. That's not cool. But I think comic book is a little bit different. You know, I think comic books are a little nerdier than bands.
Yeah.
So it's okay to be a little awkward.
Yeah. I think it's funny that whole thing where it's not cool to like something too much. I never had that.
Or at least show that you like it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Those of us who do not know, again, I'm showing off my toys. This is Wulf and Batsy #1, bagged and boarded because I'm one of those people. All my comics are bagged and boarded. And Bryan, this is all yours. Right? You created this. This is the labor of love. You've been doing this for like 20 years.
Yep. Created the characters in
you created
created it in December 1999 during Christmas.
Okay. Oh, that's it. Because whenever I see Christmas, I think of a werewolf and a vampire. Yeah. There we go. Grave Danger. I just fell in love with these characters. Like I make no bones about it. I'm an alternative comics fanboy, so I back everything. And alternative. I don't know what magic he uses, but I need to show this. Could you read the price? $1.99.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what God's Pete sacrifices to get his comics so cheap. So I was like, don't take this the wrong way. Even if I don't like it, I'm buying it because why not? It's take the risk. Right. A lot of like comics these days are just too expensive, and I'm not going to take the risk. But so I bundled up everything, and I never heard. No offense, but I never heard of Wulf and Batsy before issue #1 came out. I never knew who you were,
right, sure.
And I kind of knew who Josh Howard was, so I was looking forward to T-Bird and Throttle because I was a big fan of Dead at 17. So when I got Wulf and Batsy, I kind of didn't even pay attention to like what I was ordering. I was just like, I'll turn it, I'm backing it, and I got it. I was like so excited when I read issue #1. I was like, this was fun, and if memory serves me correctly, I think I messaged you within like a week of reading that comic. Like, can I buy some, can I commission some art from you? That's how much I liked it. It was fun. Like, I haven't felt like a little fanboy kid in a long time. So there you go, everybody. I'm an unabashed. I'm like a little kid, Oh my God, I like this. I gotta have more of this, And I think that's a fun way for a comic book fanatic to be.
Right, absolutely, I agree. I'm that way too, and
so there you
go. And that's kind of what the comic was designed for. It was kind of like I think there was a questionnaire online a couple weeks ago where somebody said, "Who's your target audience?" And I just said, my target audience is me when I was 16. I'm just trying to make a comic book that I know I would have loved when I was a teenager, or even younger than that, just
yeah, it's. And I don't see anything wrong with that. Like obviously that's tongue in cheek. You want everybody on the planet Earth to buy a copy.
Sure.
You want them to buy 3 or 4 copies of the comic. But there's nothing like if you don't like it, if you don't please yourself, I think the fans would like if you're phoning it in. Let's say, I think the fans could tell.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't love it, the fans could tell. And I forget who it was. I think Tonic Ball said when we talk, he's like, oh, he said, let's stop talking about Marvel for a minute and talk about all the wonderful new comics. And so I'm going to break my tonic ball rule for a second. And when I get new comics from, which I don't anymore, I could tell that they don't love them. I could tell that they weren't little kids excited about who would win in a fight, Spider-Man, Batman, or Wolverine and Superman. But when I read your comics, I'm like, this guy was definitely had your Universal monster figures on your wherever you played on the kitchen floor, and you had the Gillman fighting a vampire, fighting, or where, and knowing you probably had a mask and makeup on too. It seems like you're an excited child, which is good. You're an adult, you're a father, but you have the heart of a child. It comes. I keep looking at the comic covers because I think they're fun.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this. Look at this mess. You got a werewolf just covered in blood. I don't know if people can see. You got a vampire. Her eye is out.
Yeah.
She's casting a spell and she tosses her eye out to spy on everybody. I thought that was so cool. I don't know. I could rant and rave and gush like a little kid forever.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Thanks so much.
Oh, I wanted to ask you. You are obviously a big monster movie fanatic. You like your monster movies. So the next issue that's coming out is about a gorilla suit.
Right.
This was something I knew nothing about until you started promoting your comic. You want to tell people what with the gorilla suit? I think this is so. It's like such a cool little part of Hollywood history. And I'm talking too much already because I'm sleepy and I drank 6 cups of coffee before you came up.
Well, I'm behind you then. I only had like 3 cups of coffee today, but the
okay.
Well, okay. So to explain, yeah, in old Hollywood before CGI, if they wanted to have a gorilla in a movie, if it was a jungle movie or a horror movie or a circus movie or whatever, they'd have to have somebody dress up in a costume and play a gorilla in a gorilla suit, right? And of course, you watch any old black and white movies and stuff like that. Gosh, even some of the old color movies, they have gorilla suits all the time. And I always loved them. I always thought they were cool ever since I was a little kid.
Trading place.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So
the last one I could think of was Trading Place with
yeah, or The Incredible Shrinking Woman in the 80s,
right?
But
oh yeah, okay.
But I love the old movies, and I think ever since I was a kid, I was fascinated with just gorilla suits, you know. And when I was a kid, I always had this fantasy, like someday for Halloween I'm gonna get a full gorilla suit and be a gorilla for Halloween. I don't know why, just fixation. So in 2010 I actually made that dream come true when I had the money to do it, right? So for some reason that got me thinking, like what a cool, you know, monster costume for a killer, you know. And so I came up with this idea of a story of like a guy, a little bit autobiographical here, because I'm from Ohio. I grew up in Ohio, and then when I was in my 20s I moved to California to seek my career, and I ended up working in TV animation. Well, I thought, what if there was a guy, a Midwest guy from Ohio, whose dream in the 1930s was to go to Hollywood and become a gorilla suit actor. so so he does that. He goes out to Hollywood and he gets one little break, but he doesn't get credit for it. And then everything else he gets is rejection. And so he ends up being poverty stricken, and his dreams are shattered, and it drives him insane. And he decides to take revenge on the world by becoming.
And the only thing left to do is kill.
Yes, in a gorilla suit.
Yeah.
And there's awesome. A line in the story where he says, what does he say? As a man, I'm a prisoner of cruel reality, but in a gorilla suit, I am free. And I live my dream, or whatever. So it's almost like when he's in the suit, he's free instead of being out of the suit.
That is awesome.
But yeah, so it was a story I came up with years ago, like 10 years ago. I came up with this story, but I was working on other Wulf and Batsy stories that felt more important. So this was a short story that I shoved on the back burner, and thought I will get to that someday. And so then when Alterna picked up the book, and basically Peter Simeti just wanted me to reprint all the old stories I'd already done, but they were these long story arcs. And he said, in between the story arcs, can we have short single issue stories? And I thought, oh yeah, I got a whole backlog of ideas written down that I haven't had a chance to get to. And the Gorilla Suit Maniac was number one on the list. I couldn't wait to draw that one. So it was an excuse to indulge this crazy fantasy idea, but it was also, you know, a chance to talk about Hollywood history a little bit too.
I could see you writing like these long story arcs. You are trapped, but in those single issues, you are free.
Very much so. Very much so.
So, did you buy the Gorillas? Do you still have it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You still have it? When I was a kid, I worked at a florist, and they played a prank on every new employee. Oh, John, go upstairs and get these, whatever. I forget what they sent me upstairs. So I go up into the attic. It can't be any more scarier. You know, the light is flickering. You know, I'm adding sounds, and I turn on the light, and there's the owner, dressed in a full body gorilla costume, yells at me. I screamed. Ah! You know, I think I threw a punch. I think I threw. He said I had the best reaction of all the people he's ever. And when I come downstairs, everybody's like, "Congratulations, you work here now."
That is great.
So yes, I can only imagine a sudden gorilla. Oh my god,
that is awesome. That's the Halloween spirit.
Yeah, it didn't last too long in that place. Oh, Bush band down. The black and white inks look cool. Okay, here we go. We got a first question. The black and white inks look cool. What is the premise of Wulf and Batsy?
The premise of Wulf and Batsy is it's the adventures of a werewolf and a cute female vampire wandering the earth, searching for a place to call home. But everywhere they go, they end up eating people and getting run out of town. That's the basic premise for every story.
Yeah. It's tough to be a werewolf. It's tough to be a vampire.
Yeah.
They keep getting discriminated against. All they want to do is eat flesh, drink blood.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? But
Bushman likes that. All right, there you go.
Along the way, let's see. But along the way, they have run-ins with other monsters.
Bushman, you can get back. Oh, there we go. I love that eyeball creature.
Yeah. So along the,
can you see that? That is awesome.
The lighting is not great here, but along the way, they go different places and end up meeting different kinds of monsters and villains and all kinds of silly adventures. Here you can see some of the black and white art.
Yeah, look at that. Bryan, he draws there we got look at this Batsy over there. in her
yes
sexy 90s. we got Wulf over here. And who's this charming gentleman right here?
That is Professor von Zagzog, one of the arch villains.
And look at this corner box. That is awesome. I love the look of all this. So here, while I got the back camera on, I might as well show off your wonderful covers. This is issue 4. Oh, Bushman says your covers are awesome. They really draw the eye. I got to agree.
Thank you.
This was the first that I've seen. Oh, as I smash into the camera, this is the first that I've seen of Wulf and Batsy. And I got to say, the orange or the reddish orange and the yellow, it really stood out. You know, among a group of comics that stood out, this really, I was excited for this. Right, just look at Batsy over there. So, who's the fan favorite? Oh, Cliff Woodbury, the art is great. There you go. You got. Who's the fan favorite? Who do you think everybody likes more, Wulf or Batsy?
Oh boy, it depends. I get different kinds of reactions.
I know. I'm making you pick me.
Some people love the big, scary, ferocious monster, and some people love the cute little sexy female vampire.
Yeah. I got to say right away, I was drawn to Batsy, but Wulf, he's sneaking up on me. He kind of reminds me of like a Hulk in a kind of a way. Mm-hmm. He kind of just wants to be left alone,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah.
He kind of just wants to do his own thing, and trouble finds him. Unfortunately, he needs to eat human flesh, but you know, nobody's perfect.
Right. Yeah, it's well, yeah.
I love this cover.
Yeah, you get to know Wulf a lot more slowly. Batsy's much more outgoing. She's the she's the extrovert. Wulf is the introvert. But on the new campaign for issue where we have pre-orders up for issue 8 and 9. We're going to release them both at the same time. And
yes, you have 2 issues.
And it's a brand new story. And in that story, you do get inside Wulf's head more. He spends a lot more time in his human form, and you get to know what kind of person he is when he's not the monster.
Okay. Is it autobiographical at all? Anything we need to be worried about you? You know, keep you away.
Well, I always
stay away from the Baugh household. Is there a reason why you had to leave California?
Right. I always say people would be surprised if they knew how much autobiography is sort of buried underneath all of the syrupy layers of monster movie nonsense. There's little hints of it in there. More of it from when I was younger than now, you know. Working out some of those old angsty youthful demons.
Yeah. So for those of you who may or may not know, you could buy back issues. Where can you get back issues of Wulf and Batsy for those who want to get caught up if they're back in the new campaign?
Actually, I have something interesting for you there. On my personal website, I have a store page where you can now order a package of issues 1 through 6 and an issue of Alterna's anthology series called It Came Out on a Wednesday, where there's an unpublished anywhere else short story, Wulf and Batsy short story in that issue. And they're all signed. and I have the new Wulf and Batsy collector cards on there too. And that's on my personal website on
oh, cool.
It's bryanbaugh.net. If you go there and click the store page.
Okay, send me a link and I'll put it in the description for this video when it posts up
Will
later.
do.
We got Cam here. Cam says he commissioned you. He's my friend. Me and Cam used to go to the same comic book store when we were teenagers. He's the one that did the asked for the drawings of the he loves it. Right? Hey Cam, thank you for showing up, Cam. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Also for the fun Twitter feed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to point this out. Cam says, hey guys, I just wanted to thank Bryan for the great Dracula Castle inspired commission. So he hired Bryan to do some original artwork just like I did. And I got to say, both of us are beyond the moon as ecstatic.
Oh.
They're wonderful. I go in my comic book room and I'm just like, I can't believe I have original art. It's something I always said I was never going to do, but I don't know what it was. I just felt like it was something I had to do. It was, kind of like I wanted to, this is going to sound selfish, but I wanted to reward myself for getting excited about comic books again, because I was very down on comic books for a couple of years. And then I discovered you guys, Alterna and Allegiance Arts, and so much of the independent stuff. But anyway, I wanted to talk about what Cam says over here. He says, also for the fun Twitter feed, it's very refreshing. It's kind of sad that Cam has to say that your Twitter feed is refreshing, given the state of comic book professionals these days.
Yeah.
I don't want to dwell on the negative, but yes, you're very positive. You talk about monster movies. You obviously love the medium of comics. You love the movies. Bryan has been recommending horror movies for me. My wife won't come down the basement anymore because she thinks I'm watching horror movies, which is probably the truth. So that's, my older brother is into horror the way I'm into comics. So
right.
He and I watch a whole bunch of horror movies. So that's taking me back. Oh, Lacey Lee saying hello. Lacey's another one of my regulars. Thank you, Lacey. She's up like she's in the middle of these Canadian forest fires, so she's probably looking like a chimney sweep right now.
Yeah. Had a bit of that in California when I was living there too. So I know how that goes.
Oh yeah. My friend Jimmy says there's 4 seasons with mudslides, forest fires, and I forget the other ones, wildfires.
Earthquake.
And drought. Yeah, that was the 4 seasons in California. So you always your comic book idea has always been monsters, right? I mean, and the comic books have always been dominated by superheroes, but you've always, like, I know you're a big fan of comics like Werewolf by Night.
Yeah.
Like what about like I, Vampire, early Tomb of Dracula? You collected all of those?
Tomb of Dracula was a very important one for me.
Now, what about
Swamp Thing?
Yeah, I love Tomb of Dracula. Oh, Swamp Thing. Yes, we talked about Swamp Thing. One of my favorite characters. Something about that character just brings out the best in all the writers. But you like the pre-Alan Moore ones. You were into the Len Wein, Bernie Wright.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some. And I always say that Martin Pascal's run of Swamp Thing is unfortunately followed by Alan Moore, so he gets overlooked. Those are some really good classic horror.
Nestor Redondo.
Yeah.
I remember.
And what about like Man Thing? And what about Godzilla?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, Nestor Redondo. That's the hardest. I couldn't remember his name.
Yeah.
Couldn't remember his name.
Yeah, actually,
great, very moody, very dark.
You know, it's interesting. Like the Bernie Wrights and Len Wein Swamp Thing, the first 10 issues, that is like classic sacred text, right? And everybody loves the Alan Moore stuff that came after. But I also really, really, really love that section of Saga of the Swamp Thing in between, where it was pure childish monster stories. I mean, it was so simple, but it was so fun because it was just random monster stories, issue after issue. Just great stuff.
Yeah. I remember the one he went into the town where everybody wore masks, so everybody was beautiful, and then they took them, and everybody was a monster,
right?
Like a Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Bushpan asked, "What about Japanese kaiju? Are you into the big monsters?"
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sure.
Kaiju.
Yeah, I love Godzilla movies. I especially love the old ones, the 60s and 70s ones. You know, the ones that were on TV and endless reruns when I was a kid in the 80s, right? Yeah, I love those old ones. I'm not as well versed as some of my friends who know the names of the different eras, but I can tell you the names of all the monsters. And I love Godzilla versus Mecha
Yeah,
Godzilla.
yeah, that's pretty much what.
Yeah,
Yeah, I could name the monsters, but yeah, some guys. I mean, just like I'm sure my friends are like tired of me talking about different particular golden age, got bronze age, and
right.
this comic book. So I understand that. I always say like there's geeks. A geek is anybody who's super into something.
Yeah.
Like my brother's a horror movie geek. My brother's also a motorcycle geek. And then there's sports geeks and there's beer drink. I got a couple of friends that are wine geeks.
Right.
So I'm not gonna get when people talk to me about Godzilla. I don't know what you're saying, but I appreciate the enthusiasm. I love when people are fans of
I can list my
Cam says the Swamp Thing when it was a monster comic. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no. I was just gonna say I can rattle off my favorite Godzilla movies really quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla because I love King Caesar. Godzilla versus Megalon because I love Jet Jaguar. Godzilla versus Gigan because you have Ghidra and
Awesome.
Gigan teaming up against Godzilla. That's a great one. There was one in the early 2000s, I think it was called what was it? Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidra, All Out Monsters Attack. That is a great looking Godzilla in that movie. I love the shape of his head and everything. I love all those. I love especially the old ones. Oh, and Godzilla versus the original Godzilla versus Mothra. I think it was 67, maybe. It was also called Godzilla versus the Thing, but Mothra was the villain. But the look of Godzilla in that movie is my favorite Godzilla because he has like big, long, sharp claws and crazy sharp teeth and these like angry eyebrows. It's the perfect looking Godzilla to me. That's the one.
Yes.
Whenever I have a commission where somebody asks me to draw Godzilla, that's the version I draw. I love that look. It might be 64. I can't remember if it's 64, 67, but I love that Godzilla.
I put that's the one. That's the one with the little women that would sing.
No, I don't
calm down Mothra.
I don't
control Mothra.
Oh, they might be in that one. It's been a while since I watched it, but I love the look of it. He comes out of the dirt in that one, like he was under the ground. It's really cool. He just has a great look in that particular one. If you look him up in that one.
You would know, but are they like in continuity? Do they contradict each other? Is every movie its own thing?
Sort of.
I haven't watched them since the 430 movies went.
Right. Yeah, I mean they sort of do.
Yeah, I imagine the studios are
like different. Every now and then they'll have like two that sort of seem to bounce off each other, but and then they'll do another one where the monsters remember each other, but then they'll go completely off the rails,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's
Lacey Lee says she loves the original Godzilla.
Yeah.
That's the one with Raymond Burr, or at least they handed in Raymond Burr for the American audience, right? He was.
Yeah.
With the oxygen device, right?
Yeah. Oh,
as he's partial to Godzilla's look from Godzilla versus Biollante.
Yeah, and Biollante.
You could picture.
And Biollante itself is a great looking monster.
You can picture the different Godzilla.
Oh yeah, but Biollante is a.
Which one is Biollante? I can't.
It's this crazy looking thing. It looks like it has kind of like an alienish alligator head, but then its body looks like this big kind of weird blob with like big long tentacles, and the end of every tentacle has like a Venus flytrap mouth on it. It's a cool looking monster.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is a cool one. Yeah. That is a really cool one. Yeah, when I was a kid and when Cam was a kid, we grew up in the same town. It would be Monster Week, and the 430 movie. You'd ride your bicycles home from school. You're like, "This Monster Week!" Everybody would get excited. Today it's Godzilla versus Biollante, and you come home. And I remember I had a little black and white TV. I'd get something to eat and sit there and turn the TV on and watch all. I don't even think I've watched the Godzilla movie in color since.
Wow, that's great. Those are a secondary love for me. I'm much more into the Universal monster movies and European horror movies, which I never shut up about.
Yeah. Which my favorite? What's your favorite Universal monster? I already know the answer.
Oh, the Wolfman. The Wolfman. I mean, I love them all.
Yeah, I do that. You like the Wolf?
Yeah.
My favorite is the Gill Man. I don't know. I guess because he's obviously a deep one from Lovecraft.
Yeah.
So I'm a Lovecraft.
Yeah. I love the creature, and What's that? Say again.
I was gonna ask you, is there a Gilman coming up in Wulf and Batsy?
I do have one old story that I've set aside, kind of like the Gorilla Suit Maniac, where it's one that I did years ago that I want to get back to and do. It involves a reptilian creature, but it's not like the creature from the Black Lagoon. It's a little different.
Oh, okay.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to say too much because I'll ruin it, but it's got a cool angle on it too.
Yes, yeah. You don't want to give any spoilers, but I could live in hope.
Yeah,
I'll live in hope of a Gilman carrying Batsy off, not realizing she's a vampire. Yeah, Kev says Monster Week. Yeah, Kev's backing me up. He remembers the Monster Week, Dinosaur Week. There was Shark Week. There was Tarzan Week.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would go to boring like Bogart movies, which I at 12 years old didn't want to see. But the 4:30 movie was a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that was all over the country, but back in New York, the 4:30 movie. I had the guy, an animation of a guy on a camera. It was a lot of fun. Very exciting. Now, how do you feel about like the funny? The funny ones like Abbott and Costello meet the Wolf.
Oh, love them.
Abbott and Costello meet Dracula.
Love them.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love Abbott and Costello, but to have them meeting the monsters is just heaven. I mean, that's like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein is the best of the bunch. There's also one they did that was Abbott and Costello meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Where Boris Karloff played he played Dr. Jekyll. He didn't really. Once they went into Mr. Hyde, they had a stunt man doing it because it was when he was older. But that was a really cool one too. And then of course I'm not the world's biggest fan of Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, only because they overplayed it on TV when I was a kid. Like every time they'd have Abbott Costello Meet the Monsters on TV, I would always hope it was Meet Frankenstein, and it would always almost every other time it'd be Meet the Mummy, and I always wanted to, so I kind of had a chip on my shoulder towards Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy. but I like it, but it's like it's not the same as Meet Frankenstein, where you have the Wolfman and Frankenstein and Bela Lugosi as Dracula, and that's the best.
The thing that I loved the most as a kid is horror related. It wasn't scary at all, but it was the Rankin and Bass Mad Monster Party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When
have you
ever seen that?
Oh yeah. I have a DVD.
Boris Karloff does he's scientist. Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
With the Francine, the hot red.
Yeah, it's a little slow by today's standards.
I love,
but the good parts are really cool. Yeah.
I love those old. Just something about those old horror movies I really do dig. And Bryan has been getting me back into Hammer films, which I've never seen uncut before. I've always seen them on like regular TV as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
My dad and I would come home from church. We'd either watch westerns or we watch horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Lee as Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's a different experience watching them uncut. I'll tell you that.
Did you?
I can see why
I recommended Captain Kronos to you. Did you ever watch that one?
Yeah, I wasn't able to see it. Oh. I gotta look it again. It's not. I'm not getting another streaming service.
Oh.
But it's on like the one that I don't have. So
right.
I gotta.
I'm the fanatic
to see it again.
I'm the fanatic that buys all these things on Blu-ray. I've got a massive collection of movies.
Yeah,
I always have to. I want to be able to see it right when I want to see it. I don't want to wait.
But. Right, and you're absolutely right, because my wife gets Blu-rays and DVDs, and now I'm glad I am, because I'm like a couple of things are getting like censored and changed.
Yeah, I heard.
So I do think it's an important thing to have, like even comic books that you brought, that like the if you go to Chronicology, you'll see like Wolverine's cigarettes or cigars or whatever are edited out. Some whole panels had dialogue changed. Right behind me, I gave you a tour of the comic book room. I got hard copies. I got vinyl albums. I got 45s. I got DVDs. I want. I got a generator, so when the apocalypse happens, I can still read my comics, and I can still read my watch my movies.
Yeah, they even censored some of the Marvel magazines in the reprints too.
Yes, yes. It was. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think Savage Tales #1. They visited Thundra's realm, the Femizons, and there was nudity in it,
Mm-hmm.
which surprised me because you don't really see a Stan Lee comic with John, John Buscema art with nudity. So when that got reprinted, it got changed. It just stunned me because you recognize that art style so well, and
Yeah.
then to see boobies, I was like, what the. Arthur Tripp, another one of my subscribers. Are you a fan of the EC Comics?
Oh, hey, of course. Absolutely, 100%.
I knew the answer before I asked.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
I got all the in fact, I this was a big deal for me. I started getting the EC Comics, the reprints. I think it was the company was called Gladstone, I think. When I was in high school, they started putting those out and I started finding them. But then right when I got out of high school and I was going into college, they came out with there was a guy named Russ Cochran, I believe his name was. He came out with the big hardcover EC box sets where it was
Oh, yeah, the oversized edition.
yes, the big hardcover collections in the box in the slip cases at the tail end of the 80s going into the 90s. And I swore, I said, when I make my first, they were like $100 each for like each one of these box sets. And of course that was a fortune
Yeah,
to me back then.
yeah.
But I swore, I said, as soon as I make my first $100 as an artist, that's the first thing I'm going to buy. And damn it, I did it. It took me a few years to get to it, but I did
Oh, good for you.
keep that promise to myself, and I have them all now.
You used only your artist money to pay.
Yep, yep,
You earmarked your artist money for.
yep.
Yeah, that is.
Got them all.
You know, I obviously I missed EC. I'm an old guy, but EC was defunct by the time I was, and I did. It was something I missed because I was a superhero junkie. But
Mhm.
I every time I read interviews back like in the '90s, I started to get really into what the artists had to say and what the writers had to say,
Mhm.
and every artist was talking about EC and these names, and I'm going back and now I can afford them. I've been collecting Eerie and Creepy from the beginning, and oh my god,
Yeah,
I've been missing such good stuff.
yeah.
You know, there's such good stuff. I know again. I look at these old draftsmen's like the way they do
Mm.
backgrounds, and one of my earlier showcases that you commented on was now I can't remember the artist's name, but you gave me a big background on the artist. Uh, but I was talking about how one of the
Oh,
Archie artists he did a moody vampire story.
no, it was
Yeah, you said
the Vampire Tales magazine issue 1.
Vampire Tales
It
#1.
had
That's it. Yes,
a
yes.
backup story, and on the on your video review, you said I like this art, but I don't recognize the artist, and you said Sala, and I said, oh my gosh, is that Rich?
Right,
I said no. You said Bernay. You said Bernay, and I said, oh my gosh,
right.
I said,
Burnett,
is that
Burnett.
Jordy Bernay? Because I love Jordy Bernay. I've been a big fan of his since the 90s because he did a series called Torpedo 1936 that I found at the weird comic book store in Columbus where I was going to school. And man, I bought every one of those because I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is like every page of his stuff is like an education in how to be a better inker. He's just it's like the opposite of Wrightson. Like if you study Bernie Wrightson for like the complexity of his inks, Jordy Bernay is like the opposite. It's like this is how to be a superb inker, but do it simple. And so I aspire to be kind of
Okay.
somewhere between those guys. But man, I got every issue of Torpedo 1936, and so but I didn't have that Vampire Tales magazine. So on your review, when you said is this the name is Bernay and you didn't recognize it, I thought if that's Jordy Bernay, oh my gosh, this must be one of his early published pieces before he was famous. So I went and got a copy of it. I found a really nice.
Yeah, that was 1940.
Yeah, it would have been. So I found a really nice copy of it on eBay and looked it up, and sure enough, it's him. It's just his early stuff.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's great. I love hearing people like geek out over the artists that they love. You mentioned Sala,
Yeah,
which now, oh my god, I can't believe I missed this guy.
yeah.
Bryan hooked me up with the comic called Evil Eye, and it's hard. You could buy the collection, but I'm a freak. I got to get the original floppies. So I just hunted down. I just picked up #4. It should be coming in the mail. Oh my god, this is a guy I didn't know anything about. And how do you pronounce Peculiar.
Yeah.
Is the female character. I got to agree with you. It is like such a charming, like a it reminds me of what's the guy who does he does those morbid Ed Gorey, I think his name.
Ed Gorey
kind of reminds me of that guy.
Yeah, the guy that does the Addams Family stuff is what you're thinking of, I think, right? Yeah,
right.
Charles. Well, that's Charles Addams. Yeah. But
just dark.
But gory, yeah.
Yeah, Charles Addams is the Addams Family, but then there's Ed Gorey does like
right,
twisted like children's books.
Yeah, and he did really
love.
He designed a whole Dracula play in the 70s. He did all the artwork for the set pieces and everything, and that's really what they adapted to the Frank Langella movie. But Edward Gorey, right? Yeah, Edward Gorey.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, Edward. Oh my God. Edward Gorey, Cam's
but
Cam is unbelievable with his knowledge.
Yeah, I had it in my head, and I just got lost in the circuitry up there. But Richard Sala.
Oh, hello, Eloise.
Richard Sala. That was such a huge deal for me. So it was when I first created Wulf and Batsy, and I was just starting to shape the ideas and figure out my drawing style for it and everything. And by chance, I found that comic book series, Evil Eye, by Richard Sala. And I was just looking at it at the store, and I was like, this is so weird, but kind of so cool in a weird way. I'm going to buy a couple issues and just see if I like it. And the Evil Eye comic is weird because the first half is this continuing story called Chuckling What's It, I think is what it's called. Or Reflections in a Glass Eye or something like that. Scorpion's Eye, something about that. I don't know.
Yeah, Reflections in a Glass Eye.
Yeah.
What's It is a whole other hardcover collection.
Yes. That story didn't really grab me. But the backup story, which was every issue was a completely different, isolated, contained story about Peculiar, those stories I completely fell in love with.
Yeah.
And the style he used and the storytelling style, it also reminded me a lot of like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the way the backgrounds are very surreal and everything, but simple. But it really gave me it unlocked something in my brain and made me go, oh, this is the way to handle the backgrounds in my comic. Like, this is the way to draw it. Like, keep it simple, but spooky. And I think I don't know if you noticed it, but when you look at those Peculiar stories in Evil Eye, do you see a little bit of the seeds of early Wulf and Batsy in there? Do you recognize it?
Oh, yes. I was going to bring it up, like in the first issue when they go to that inn and they're going into that, I don't know, like fairy village. Like now, I definitely see Richard Sala in the background. Yeah. It's almost like a stage play. I always bring up Will Eisner. To me, Will Eisner was very theatrical rather than cinematic. You know? And I look at your work as very theatrical. I can definitely see at some point going to a theater off Broadway, sitting down and watching a Wulf and Batsy play, and it would be, I think, more true than the movie. You know, I just think that would be awesome. Or go in there and see I can never say Peculiar. That's gonna kill me. The backup character in Evil Eye. That's very theatrical too. And I don't think I'm insulting anybody by comparing you to Will Eisner's work. It's very, very. And we talking earlier. You got into Eisner from those black and white reprints from Kitchen Sink. So whenever I see his work in color, it kind of takes me out of it. I don't know. You like what you like. I got exposed to him in black and white, but I don't know. I'm rambling. But I would love that. How would a Richard Sala play produced of Wulf and Batsy?
Well, I'll tell you, one of my big regrets is that for years. Okay, so I started following him on Instagram and sending him little messages like complimenting his stuff he was putting on there, and he apparently was a real recluse. Like very shy, didn't do conventions, I guess. This is my understanding. If I'm wrong, I'm just saying that's the impression I got. But he did follow me back. And every now and then he would fave or like my stuff or whatever. And I felt like I wanted so bad. I was like, I want to ask him to do a guest cover for Wulf and Batsy or something, because he was such an inspiration when I started it. And I was planning to do that. And it just never quite felt like the right time. and then he passed away suddenly. And
Right.
I'm always regretted that.
I
Like,
know.
and he wasn't that old either. Yeah, and it was a real shock, and I wish I could have got him to do that.
Yeah.
But amazing talent.
Yeah. Well, that would have been a one. Yeah, that would have been wonderful to see a cover by him, alternate cover or the main cover. That would have been amazing. Yeah,
but his work is a real
that's.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say the Richard Sala world is a real rabbit hole you can go down, because he's done all these different books and they're all separated and they're not all continuing into each other. There's another Peculiar book. I don't know if I told you. There's one single volume that's just called Peculiar and the Groon Grove Vampires, and it's just a little tiny paperback. It's not a comic format. It's like a little tiny. It's a small book like that, but it's like a trade paperback.
Wow.
But it's another story he did with her. And then after he passed away, Fantagraphics put out the final collection of all his stuff. It was like the final book of all his works that he had in progress. And I was looking at it, and I got to the very end, and there was one last Peculiar story in there that I'd never seen before. And I just about got misty-eyed sitting there looking at that all by myself, because I was like, oh, it's like Richard Sala gave me one last gift from beyond the grave, it was so beautiful. Like that was a really moving book for me. But but his stuff is it's all out from Fantagraphics, so you only have to go to one publisher, but there's so many different things and they're all kind of unrelated to each other that it can be a real rabbit trail finding all of his stuff. But he's great fun.
Yeah, I really just so thank you for introducing me to him. I'm kind of fascinated now. I can see why he's a unique talent. Cam says, "How dare I compare you to that Will Eisner?" For those of you who don't know, Will Eisner was, I think, one of the. Correct me. Cam will correct me if I'm wrong. Cam knows everything. As much as I pretend to know about comics, Cam knows more. But Will Eisner, as far as I know, is one of the first people to try to elevate the medium.
Yeah.
So I always put him high on a pedestal.
Yeah.
The EC Comics. Okay.
No, go ahead.
I try not to interrupt my guest, but too much coffee and
Go ahead. You were saying?
I was going to say the EC Comics is like a whole. It's like an ocean of comics that I remember when I was getting tired of punk rock or getting tired of heavy metal. I was like, you know what? I think I want to get into jazz. And I said one thing to some guy at a party, and this guy was like the floodgates opened, and he just like explained every important jazz, and I was overwhelmed. I get that same feeling when I look at EC Comics. It's a whole world of comics that, like, to a kid like me who was just reading Marvel and DC, and then like all of these amazing talents that Cam says he's the creator of the graphic novel format. He's talking about Will Eisner. Yes, there was one graphic novel before Will Eisner in the 50s called
something about
it rhymes with lust, or rhymes with rust, something like that.
Yes,
but that was, I had to pick up I got a reprint, but it was a full-on crime novel. Like it wasn't sexy, it wasn't monsters, it was just like something that you'd see like on an ABC mystery night. It was actually pretty incredible. And I always point out that the artist was one of the first black comic book artists too. So I always kind of laugh when all these people today are like, we've been. I can't remember the man's name. That's why.
Is it? But the guy that did Phantom Lady, right?
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I believe so.
I like smooth cafe jazz. I still like my loud music there, Eddie. when I'm commuting home, driving home, I'm blasting heavy metal. Don't let the beard fool you. I was sending music to Bryan one night. We were talking, right? I sent you a couple of Clash songs, and you sent me Skinny Puppy.
Yes, that's my favorite.
Skinny Puppy just played 3 days after you were introducing me to Skinny Puppy music. They played here in New York, and I was like, oh man, I only found out about him because one of my other friends posted on Instagram. Look where I am
Yep.
tonight. And I'm like,
They just
you know,
did.
so I missed
Yeah,
him.
I
Yeah.
often tell this tale. Me and my best friend Brian Fife discovered them on Halloween night, 1987, and they instantly became our favorite band and the music that I've always listened to ever since when I'm drawing. My biggest inspiration, fuel, and they have like 6 different bands. Like the main musician guy, Kevin Key. Guess how that inspired my comic book. Kevin with a C. Kevin Key. He's the main musician from Skinny Puppy, and he has his own solo work. He has Skinny Puppy. He has a group called Doubting Thomas, a group called Download, a group called Cyberactive, a group called Plateau. He does all these different, and I just,
Okay.
and he's just pure magic for me. Like any sound this guy makes with a synthesizer, I just love it. And he can't quit. He never stops. He just keeps putting stuff out, and that, talk about an endless library of music from just one guy. but we've been following them ever since, and
Oh,
19
some people.
but we've been following them ever since, and just this year they're doing their farewell concert to retire. And me and Brian Fife actually went and saw them on April 28th in Cincinnati, and it was sort of like the end of this 40-year fan journey. But we got to meet them, which was great, and talk to them in person, which was wonderful. And I got a million pictures and video, and we did the VIP thing, so we were right up front. Like I was right up against the metal barriers almost. It was a great final experience.
Oh, was that the first time you saw
Oh
them?
no! First time I saw him was 1992.
Oh,
I've seen him many times,
okay.
but yeah,
And they recognize you. They're like, Bryan.
they kind of gave me one of these.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was great.
Yeah. One of my favorite bands is the Ramones. And of course, they're from my hometown. And I don't know how many times my friends like, we're going to go see the Ramones. I'm like, well, I'm going to go see this other band because I'm always going to have a chance to see the Ramones. And then they all died, and I never saw the Ramones. So, I mean, I met them before. I shook their hands, had conversations with them, but I've never seen them perform. I'm so. Oh,
the great concert I came that close to seeing, and I missed it when I was a kid, was in I guess it was 86. I was in junior high, and it was the Run DMC and Beastie Boys Raising Hell tour, which is legendary now. And it came through, I think it came to
yes,
I think it came to Cincinnati, and me and my friend were supposed to go see it, and then it became a big news story that they had just played the night before in Cleveland, and there was a riot. And my parents got scared. We got scared. And it was just like, because we were little kids in junior high. And then it was like, okay, we can't do that one. And now, of course, it's this legendary event that I missed.
So growing up, one of my favorite bands was the Who. Like, I don't know how, but I always had Who records. I think my older brothers just like gave them to me. So I always liked the Who. And then in my early teens, it was the Clash. So, and then the Who and the Clash are touring, but it was like a year before, maybe 2 years before, I forget the exact time, but there was that stampede where people were killed at a Who concert. So my older brothers, my 2 older brothers, my 2 older sisters, they're all going to see the Who and the Clash. And they had an extra ticket. Somebody bailed. So I had the ticket in my hand. I'm walking to the station wagon. Talk about the early 80s station wagon. And my father comes walking out and goes, "No, John's too young for this. The rest of you could die. Oh. John's too young for this," and took the ticket out of my hand.
Oh.
Not only would it have been my first concert, but I still never seen the Clash, and I still never seen
them.
Hey, Ward Duke says we're fascinating. Thank you. Thank you.
That's nice.
They like us. They like us. At Belmont Press, I just got your comics in the mail. I'll be reading them. I wanted to read them right away, but life just gets in the way of reading comic books.
It sure does.
Jeez, I just got to Bryan. Let's make a plan to win the lottery so I could read comics and you could just make comics. Okay. That's our new plan.
That's a good plan.
Or have everybody buy 20 copies of Wulf and Batsy. There we go. Everybody. Camp City saw the Ramones at the Old Ritz in '91, but DD was already gone. Yeah, I finally saw Black Sabbath, and it wasn't even one of the replacement singers. It was a guy that they hired just for one tour. a guy I've never seen him before, and I've never seen him since, and I can't remember his name. So I finally see Black Sabbath. I knew it wasn't going to be Ozzy. It wasn't Dio, and it wasn't whoever is singing now. It was just some like studio singer, and Motorhead was with them, so that was before Lemmy died. And I still listen to Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and the old. Oh yes, Eddie. I was blessed at Led Zeppelin today at work, and my foreman comes in and goes, "I love Black Sabbath," and I'm like, "Get out. Get out. You're wrong. You don't call Black Sabbath Led Zeppelin. You don't call Led Zeppelin Black Sabbath. Get out." Trying to be cool, trying to be hip. So yeah, you're more electronic music, right?
Yeah.
You're not the old Black Sabbath and music like
well,
that.
I mean, I'm not saying I don't have some of that around. I do. But my first choice has always been electronic, experimental, industrial music. Even some of the goth music I like. I'm a little pickier about that because some of it gets a little too mopey for me. But one of my other favorite bands is the Birthday Massacre, which has a beautiful female singer, and they do really cool electronic, very 80s sounding stuff, but with a dark edge to it. And I first heard them probably.
Are they new?
Well, I was going to say I first heard them when it was probably 2004, 2005. It was shortly after I got married. And when I heard when I heard this Birthday Massacre, I mean it immediately grabbed me as like that's like the spirit of Batsy. Which is like I'm a real pretentious. I know it's a real pretentious artisty thing to say, but it was like that's like her spirit. And like whenever I'm having a day where I have to draw Batsy and it's feeling a little challenging because I'm not quite in the mood to draw or whatever, if I put on Birthday Massacre, it's like she just comes alive in my imagination. So I would recommend the album of, I think it's called Violet was their first big one, and then there's an album called Superstition. Those two particular, I mean, I like all their stuff, but those two in particular, if you want to hear the spirit of Batsy.
I'm always on the lookout for.
I recommend that.
I also went through like a period where I was tired of music, and I rediscovered music. So I'm always Birthday Massacre. I'll check that out. Probably because I got a 2-hour commute and an hour commute to work it out, and that's when I listen to my music. Yes, Cam says, was it Tony Martin singing for Black Sabbath? Yes, it was Tony Martin. And Eddie's Gaming asked Kraftwerk. Are you a fan of Kraftwerk?
I like them and respect them. They're just a little bit earlier before the stuff I got into, but they inspired all the bands that I like. You know what I mean? In fact, I was talking about Kevin Key. I've heard him say that I've heard Kevin Key say that when Kraftwerk came out and he got that album, he threw away all of his old records and said, "This is what I should be doing," and started moving. Yeah.
Oh, really?
There's also a group called Throbbing Gristle from that same era that's really great.
Yes.
There's of course now my brain is blanking on it. I love Front 242.
Yeah, I know. You get put on the spot. People go, "What comic books do you like?"
Right.
And I'm like, "I can't think of comic books."
Right.
Meanwhile, that's all I talk about.
So, yeah, exactly. You put me on the spot, I can't think of them, but they're always in my head,
Right. I remember Kraftwerk. I had their albums, and back in college, I was a full-on pretentious artsy fartsy snob. Full on. I make no bones about it. And that was like my thing. I had to know music before anybody else. So I remember I would DJ parties, and then right in the middle of parties, I'd play Kraftwerk. If I hit this little key, it plays a little melody. People are like, "What's going on?" They want to hear dance music, and I'm playing Kraftwerk.
Right. I was just looking.
Eddie asked if you have a playlist.
It's funny. Like every story I do, I end up making a playlist that I sort of listen to for inspiration. So I have many playlists, but if you mean like specifically for Wulf and Batsy, it depends on the story. There's different songs that seem to inspire different stories. But I was running down my list here. It's like I like Aphex Twin. I like Bauhaus. There's a new.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the Bauhaus. Yeah.
There's a new group called She Passed Away from Germany that I just discovered recently, and I really like them a lot. They have a lot of that really cool 80s sound. Oh, there's a group called Evil's Toy from the 90s. that was really cool. I was really into them. There's a group. Oh, one of my favorite industrial bands
Wow.
from the 90s was a group called Abscess, Abscess, not to be confused with the thrash heavy metal
You're
band
not going to believe.
Abscess. Sorry, go ahead. What?
Oh, okay. I was going to say I saw Abscess, but I guess I saw the thrash heavy metal band.
No,
Okay.
there is a thrash heavy metal band called
Okay. So
Abscess that not to be confused. This is an industrial electronic group. I don't remember where they're from. They might be from Canada, but they were called Abscess. They were fantastic. They only had like 3 or 4 albums, I believe. There's a group called Project Pitchfork that was pretty good. I liked them a lot. Liked a lot of their stuff. I could go on forever, as you can tell.
yeah, I'm enjoying your enthusiasm. Like
Yeah.
I was saying earlier, what to me geeking out is like when somebody gets really into something. Like, I have a friend that's really into the Philadelphia Flyers.
Mhm.
I haven't seen him in a long time,
Mhm.
and he would just go on it. And I'm not a sports guy, in case you can't tell, and I don't know anything about the Philadelphia Flyers. If I was to pick a sports team, it would obviously be a New York team. But his enthusiasm for it was infectious.
Mhm.
To the point I went to go see an Islanders game playing the Flyers, and he's trying to get me to stand up and yell the Islanders suck. I'm like, dude, we're in Nassau Coliseum. We can't yell Islanders suck. So he's standing up, Islanders suck. Dude, you're gonna get me beat up. You don't do this in a hockey game. But other than that, I enjoyed his dude. So I'm enjoying your enthusiasm talking about bands, and I got, I'm definitely going to be rewatching this and rewriting some of the names of these bands.
I'll toss out 2 more real quick. There's another group from the 90s that I just remembered.
Sure.
Another group from the 90s that I just remembered called Wumpscut. They are from Germany, and they're one of the scariest bands ever. But boy,
they got to be.
They're pretty scary, but oh my gosh, all their imagery on their album covers is like dead bodies and stuff. I mean, they're brutal, but they got some really great. It's like old black and white, like war photography type stuff. They're scary looking, but they got some great songs. When I first, actually, this was an inspiration too. When I first created Wulf and Batsy, was they had a song called "Down Where We Belong." And I thought, boy, that's the spirit of Wulf and Batsy, down where they belong. And then there's another song.
That's a great title.
They have an album called Evil Young Flesh. And there's a song on there called Wulf, W-U-L-F, that I was listening to when I first created Wulf and Batsy. And when I first was sketching the characters, I was writing down all these different possible names. I had like Mr. Wulf and Wolfie, like thinking of it more like a more kiddie-oriented kind of thing in the early development. And I was listening to that album all the time. I was like, no, what am I thinking? I want this to be vicious and scary. So I think I got inspired by their spelling of that word on that song on that album, because I was listening to it a lot at the time. But they have a song on that album also I just want to throw out too. On the same album, Evil Young Flesh, there's a song called Outside, which is actually kind of a sad, melancholy sounding kind of song. And I listened to that a lot when I was first drawing Wulf and Batsy too, in the very beginning. Kind of gave me that mood of the melancholy side of with the scary, But yeah, Wumpscut, check them out. They're scary. They're good and scary music.
Wumpscut.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to write down these names later. Yeah,
I could tell you a couple more.
But I remember. I think it was.
Go ahead.
I'm sure I'm getting it up. Maybe Cam will correct me, but I don't remember if it was Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol or Neil Gaiman's Sandman, where there was actually like, these are the books that I read this month, and these are the albums that I was listening to this month.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be would like that do it, Wulf and Batsy. These are the songs that I was listening to while creating this carnage.
Yeah, I've thought about
said you met.
Yeah, I've thought about doing stuff like that before, but sometimes I don't, because I feel like everybody has music is such a personal thing, and everybody's going to have their own idea what the music is when they read it or listen to it, or whatever, read it. I don't want to ruin someone else's interpretation with my whatever, Oh, I see the comment. Netzareb.
Cam is asking, what about Nipzareb? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he saw them open for Depeche Mode. I know I'm gonna catch hell, but I've never liked Depeche Mode. My wife loves Depeche Mode, but I just never liked them.
Okay, well,
And I'll tell you why, because of a girl that drove me crazy.
right, right. Well, yeah, I mean, my wife loves Depeche Mode. I mean, I don't know if it's sexist or whatever, but I always just thought of Depeche Mode as like, that's the chicks electronic music. Sure, that's for the girls. They like that. That's cool. They got a couple of cool songs I like too, but it's like I associate them with like girlfriends I had in art school and stuff. Not really my first choice.
And that's why I don't like Depeche Mode. Paula, you know what you did.
They have one album. They have one album called Black Celebration, and the first 3 songs on that album just take me straight back to freshman year of art school in my memory. Like I just associate it with people I knew then. Let's just put it that way.
We got backup. Bush Band says we're spot on. So I always wanted to ask you this: who, in your opinion, was the best Dracula?
Oh wow, wow!
I know that's putting you on the spot, huh?
Well, my problem is I love them all, so I love them all for different reasons. I mean, here's the thing, like because I don't know if I think we talked about this before when I was on, but I am obsessed with the novel Dracula. Like I said like Dracula for me is like,
yes, you said you reread it.
Yeah, I read it almost every year. Like it's like, I've heard people do that with Lord of the Rings. For me, Dracula's like that, where it's like it's the one I can just get him.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, ironically, Christopher Lee, one of the most famous movie Draculas, he was famously a Lord of the Rings addict that would read it, every year. That was one of his favorite books.
Yep.
But I'm like that with Dracula. I read it over and over again, and there's just so many cool things in there. So I'm always looking for, here it is. Like I feel like Dracula has the same problem Batman has, where in all the movies you see a little hint of the character from the source material, but there's never been one movie that really is the character from the source. You know what I mean? And I don't feel like they've ever. I love Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
Of course I love Christopher Lee. Of course I love Bela Lugosi.
Oh yeah.
I there's things about the Franklin Jello one that I love, even though that's totally not the character from the book, but there's little hints of them in there. I love the Gary Oldman one, because that one has it's crazy, but it's a fun, crazy exaggeration of a lot of different ideas from the book that a lot of movies hadn't used before. I probably of all the, okay, so here's a weird thing. Like there was a TV movie in the 70s on the BBC with Neil Jordan as Dracula, and I don't think he's very good as Dracula myself. He's not my favorite screen Dracula, but that miniseries is the most faithful to the book adaptation of any of them, where they hit all the beats of the book. Not saying it's the best movie, they're not always the strongest interpretations, but they do make they deserve an A for effort, because they actually try to really adapt the whole book in that one miniseries with Lewis Jordan. So that deserves credit, but for me, the Dracula in the movies that's the most like the character in the book is Max Schreck as Count Orlok in Nosferatu, because in the book there's not a hint of that Hollywood tragic hero or romantic vampire at all. In the book he is completely repellent to the good guys. He doesn't seduce the women, he attacks them, and only Nosferatu really does that, where he's completely repellent.
So creepy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's a monster.
Right.
He doesn't even try. Yeah, I really think that first scene where he just comes out of the coffin, when you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It was the first scene, but was it the first time you see him? He's just like, like, almost like spring loaded. Like, oh man, that's still scary to this day.
Yeah, yeah. So, oh, you know what else? Jack Palance, the guy who made the Dark.
Oh, I forgot he
the
played
guy who made the Dark Shadows show. Dan Curtis made a Dracula movie with Jack Palance as Dracula, and he's the most like, he's scary because he seems like a psychotic Dracula. He always seems like he's like 2 minutes away from just massacring everyone. He just seems like he's filled with rage the entire movie.
Well, that's everything Jack Palance does.
Right.
Jack Palance looks like a
Yeah.
maniac. I wouldn't want to be behind him in a supermarket.
But that's the
Yeah.
that's the
Oh,
Dracula that Gene Colan based the Marvel Tomb of Dracula on, was Jack Palance's version.
yes.
And that's a cool movie.
Right. And Cam says he was a total jerk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, didn't Frank Langella also play Skeletor in the He-Man movie? Am I misremembering?
You might be right, but I don't think
is the universe movie.
I don't think I caught that one. I mean, I know about
Cam. You I know Cam. No. Good point with Nosferatu not being romanticized. Yeah, I that was like I'm trying to remember the year that Nosferatu came out, but that was
1922.
Like, you know, I think like the infancy of 1922.
Yeah.
Yes, I should have known. You'd know. Yeah, that was they were going for realism back then. I remember there was a director in the 1920s. I think he was a German director. That there was a scene where a woman was getting tortured by a bear, and he actually whipped her on camera. Didn't tell her. That, you know, these people weren't playing. Oh, Eddie backs me up. Frank Langella played Skeletor. So there you go. Dracula and Skeletor.
Yeah, I mean, I was just, yeah, I was in I sort of caught the very beginning of the Masters of the Universe thing. I was at that weird age as a kid where
I was too old.
Yeah, well, I was just barely right there too. You know, like when the first wave of Masters of the Universe came out, I was just young enough to go, wow, those are cool, and buy a few of the cool looking ones. But I was too old to stick with it for very long, and then I was out of it. So I never even bothered to see that movie, honestly.
Yeah, I've never seen it either. I was kind of fascinated when I found out it was Frank Langella, but I still never watched it. You know, but, you know, like I just picture like I don't know if they were still alive, but like what would Frank Sinatra say? Like what are you Skeletor? You know, at a party someplace. You know, I just couldn't get. First off, I was too old. I missed out on Transformers. I missed out on He-Man. Yeah. I missed out on the little G.I. Joes. My G.I. Joes were big. You know, I was too old for that. But I never liked He-Man because I hated the name. Like that's my thing. If I don't understand the character's name, like He-Man's a superhero. I know it's like barbarian sword and sorcery, but he's basically marketed as a superhero. And He-Man is a terrible name. And and everything else fell from I like Skeletor. I thought Skeletor, but you know, so yeah, you know. I don't know. Cam says German expression horror films are so great, effective. Yeah, I gotta agree with you, Cam.
I agree.
You know, you and Cam. Oh my God, I would love to get you guys in a room together. You would be like best friends. You would be like stepbrother. You know, we just become best friends. You know. What is a great actor for such a throwaway? His car was that's Frank Langella. Yeah, it was. I don't think he. What is his last film?
No,
I'm trying to remember. No, he just made a movie, The Cube or something like that, or Death Box. I don't know. You push the button and he was like the deliverer of this horror object. I think that was his last film. Didn't see that either.
No, I didn't see that.
So, let's get back to Wulf and Batsy.
Sure.
We got a bunch of people watching, and I'm going to use my hypnotic powers to make sure that they all go. So they could go to Indiegogo and back and get some Wulf and Batsy comics. They could go to Bryan Baugh. I'm sorry, what was your personal website?
I put the link actually in the comment in the private chat over here of on your screen. If you go to, I think on the right hand side it says private chat. If you click that, the link is in there. You can copy and paste it for these guys. My website is my website is bryanbaugh.net. BRYANBAUGH, all as one word, .net. And there's a store page on there, and you can get the set of Wulf and Batsy issues 1 through 6. And it came out on a Wednesday issue with the short story, and the cards are in there. And the comic book issues are all bagged and boarded and signed. So you can get all that as one package. But for the new campaign, to pre-order, well, if you want to get the back issues, if you want to just get the regular back issues without paying for them to be all together as a set, if you want to get the separate issues or just try issue 1 or whatever, they're all on alternacomics.com, the publisher's website. You can go on alternacomics.com and you can get all the Wulf and Batsy issues individually, plus the t-shirt, Plus there's a new sticker coming out we got, but also if you really want to support me, what I really need is help on here is on alternacomics.com. We got the campaign for the next 2 issues. For the summer campaign, we're going to come out with 2 Wulf and Batsy issues 8 and 9, which is the first 2 chapters of a brand new story arc.
Yeah.
And on my YouTube channel, Bryan Baugh Art, I just posted a new little video preview of that today that you can go look at to get an idea what the new story is. But if you can back that campaign and help us get, the more sales we get, the longer I can keep making these comics. That's how it works. So I hate to be a beggar, but that's just how it works.
And they're they're fun comics, there's no other way to describe it. They're fun comics, and anybody watching this right now is into comics. Like I don't feel like a shill when it's a product that I actually like. Bryan Baugh, you meet him right here. He's a gentleman. Alterna, everything Pete Samedi does, all that stuff. It's a great company. It's a fun company. These guys all love comic books, and I keep trying to take Tonic Ball's advice and not talk about Marvel and DC anymore. He's like, they're gone. Move forward. He's absolutely, why not talk about these people up? Like, again, what Cam said, that your Twitter feed is a pleasure. How sad is that Pete Samedi got attacked a couple of years ago because he said, promote your comics, talk positive on Twitter, don't block out potential customers. It was as if he said, like, to me, that was common sense. That's selling 101. Reach as many customers as you can. Mm-hmm. And boy, did he got dogpiled for saying something that I thought was like that. Basically, he said, put a sign out in front of your store. Mm-hmm. Oh man, well, people are crazy.
If I'm
But yeah, so you could go to Indiegogo and back, and you can go to Alterna Comics and back.
Yeah. Well, actually,
I'm sorry, I keep cutting.
No, it's okay. But actually, I just remembered, if you go to if you go to my website, the link you just provided in the chat, there is a link to Alterna there on the front page, so you can just, where it says Alterna Comics, if you just want to click that and then go to their pre-order page, you can get the new ones and the old ones. So
yeah, and I don't want to say cheap because that's the wrong word. Inexpensive, like the basic tier just to get all the new comics is like less than $20. Yeah. And you're gonna get a whole stack of good, interesting, fun comics. I remember, like, I had an existential crisis as a kid when I would go to a comic book store with $10 and I got less than 10 comics. Mm-hmm. I was like, what's going on? And now I don't even know what the price of a regular comic is.
Me neither.
It's probably closer to $10 than that, so I mean, Alterna, I said at the beginning, I don't know what gods Pete Samedi's sacrificing to make these comics so affordable, but keep it up. Glorious newsprint, they look like comics, they feel like comics. Mm-hmm. They're not these, like, I don't know, tissue paper garbage that other companies are making out. These are some of the best printed comics. I always talk about that when I talk about Alterna. They feel good. You got these I've got Blood Realm over here. You got these corner boxes. They're just real comics. Mm-hmm. They're good comics, good stuff.
Well, yeah. But Pete Samedi, I don't know where he found these people, but he found a printer that actually prints comics the way they were made when we were all kids. With the newsprint pages,
right,
and the glossy covers, and I mean. I remember when I first started getting them and I was like looking at them, flipping through them. I was like, it's like, these not only look good, but they feel like the way comics used to feel in my hand. And
yes,
and of course, but then you think about it, it's like, well, it's a no-brainer. They're using the exact same materials. It's like, so they really are great. And
right. You take that for granted.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, just as an artist,
the tactile sensation. I love flipping the pages. I love hearing the sound. I love smelling the comics. Mm-hmm. I know I'm an old fogey, but I don't want comics online. When people send me PDFs and stuff, I just don't read them. I don't mean to be mean, but mm-hmm. I need something physical in my hand. Yeah. I'm a very tactile person.
Right.
And I asked Pete, I said, "Where are you getting the print?" It was like, I'm not saying. I'm not saying.
It seems to be a company secret, yeah. But I will say, I'll say as an artist, I mean, drawing my pages and then looking at them on my computer screen when I make the files to send to Pete, Whenever I get the printed issues, I'm always super impressed by just how faithful the printing is to my original page. Like even when I do like fine line detail stuff, it's all there on the printed page. So this printer is just doing a phenomenal job, in my opinion.
That's got so cool to work on the comic. I don't know how. Back in the days, they used to have guys like Arthur Tripp that would deliver the artwork back and forth. Nowadays, you just send it through emails, and then you get a comic in your hand. This is my comic. I drew this. That must be so freaking cool.
It is cool.
And it's a greatly printed comic. It's it's not that has got to be cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Man. It's fun.
So oh man. I'm trying to look. Oh, here's a comic I didn't show the cover.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Oh.
Yeah, I was holding that open up too.
I'll turn the. Okay, so you got 2 comics coming out. You wanna give us a? Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's the same one I was showing. So all I know is without giving any spoilers, that there's a little bit of satisfaction because I don't know what it was, but I felt a little bad about Miss Sprinkles, what happened to her. So I'm going to get some satisfaction. It coming up, right?
Yeah. So yeah, this is something that I talk about on the new video that I put out today. In the previous story arc, there was this newspaper reporter named Blonda Speckles, which is a silly name that I came up with because she was blonde with freckles. But
I said sprinkles.
But well, she met an unfortunate end. She got her head chopped off. Spoilers. And I hate what. Yeah. Well, in Monster Comics, it's part of the ball game. Yeah. I said at the beginning when someone asked me about what's the premise of the series, I said, it's these monsters who are wandering the earth looking for a home. Well, they found a home in that issue. So they have taken over the bad guy's house and they're living there. But part of the adventure was that this newspaper reporter got killed. But so I thought, well, the series can't be over just because they found a home. So what happens? Well, what happens is a search party of the newspaper reporters, family members, and investigators that they've hired come to Wulf and Batsy's doorstep and start poking around looking for the girl because as far as they know, she just went there for a job and vanished. And they want to know what happened to her. So now the new story arc, it's a 4-issue story. It's called The Fall of the House of Zagzog, and it's 4 chapters. And we decided for this campaign we're putting out the first 2 chapters simultaneously. So that's what the new Alternate Comics campaign is. If you pre-order Wulf and Batsy issues 8 and 9. That is The Fall of the House of Zagzog, chapter 1 and 2. You get the first 2 parts of the story.
Cool. I know she was a gold digger, but I don't know.
Well, I remember at.
I guess
there was a point in the past when I remember you said something like you have a real hard time following a lead comic book character when they kill people and they're doing bad things and all this. And I remember it was even when you reviewed that Vampire Tales issue, you're like I can't love Morbius. He's a jerk. He killed somebody. Well, I was
yes,
right.
Yes.
Well,
yes,
okay.
Yes.
Well, I hate to tell you, when I was working on this new story, I was like, oh, this is going to test John's ability to keep rooting for Wulf and Batsy. That is going to be put to the test.
Yes, and that Morbius story, the poor old girl just helps him out, and he kills her. And I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, it's her fault for talking to him. Like
gotta have ice blood, I guess.
he's just a
don't talk to Morbius.
He's just a simple vampire doing what he has to do in this world.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. I think this one's gonna weird you out.
Look at Professor. Yeah, well, yeah, par for the course. Par for the course. Zagzag. Oh, yeah. I was about to give a spoiler, but some people didn't read it. But I get a lot of Anton Arcane vibes from him. Is there any inspiration in that? Am I out of left
This
field?
is funny because I don't know if I even really thought about that consciously. And then when you reviewed one of my issues on your channel, I think it was you, right? And I think you brought that up and you said he reminds me of Anton Arcane from Swamp Thing. And a little light went off in my head. I thought, yeah,
Yeah,
because I read Swamp Thing to death when I was a kid. And he did the exact same thing. He was a mad scientist who created all these unmen who were these monsters, you know. And
right.
like when I did it, I was thinking of Dr. Frankenstein. I was thinking of Herbert West, Reanimator, and all these things. But really, I was just like flying by the seat of my pants, making a mad scientist story. And then when you brought that up, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I think there must have been a little bit of Arcane rattling around in my subconscious too. Makes total sense. So yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
all that stuff is just in my
Yeah.
blood, and
Just
it's coming out in my comics.
yeah. I got affected as a kid.
Yeah,
Reading
yeah.
those Bernie Wrights. And Anton Arcane was a man, and there was a famous yeah, Camp's inspiration by osmosis. There was in Rick Veitch. I remember Swamp Thing was traveling back in time, and he's in the Civil War, and he goes into a tent where the Civil War surgeon is, and there's Anton Arcane with a mask on his face, like like protecting the patient with a mask on his face, and he's just sawing somebody, and then the patient is reaching out to Swamp Thing, like he can't say anything, but the horror in his face, and I'll never forget that image. Rick Veitch followed up Alan Moore, so how the hell are you going to follow up Alan Moore? Rick Veitch knocked it out of the park, but that panel, I'll never forget that. I always wonder who owns the original artwork to that. You would love that. I'll see if I can find it, take a picture, send it to you. It's just how people always say, can comic books be scary? Yes, there's about 4 or 5 times that I remember comic books legitimately scared me, and that's one of them. I love that panel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anton Arcane is just a great villain. So yeah,
absolutely.
Zagzog is he's like so like delusional. He's him, and only him can create the great master race. Like
well,
he's gonna improve.
I think he would say the rest of the world just isn't smart enough to get it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
they don't appreciate.
Right.
Same with me. Nobody understands my.
But that line in Boogie Nights where he says that's a YP, not a MP. That's a your problem, not my problem. I think Zagzog has that attitude about everything.
Yeah. Oh man. So the Fall of House of Zagzog is 4 issues. 2 of them are coming out in the bundle that you could
right.
Go to alternacomics.com and or Indiegogo right now. Good evening, Michael. How you doing? Good to see you. Thank you for showing up. I can't recommend this comic enough. I really do enjoy it. Like I got so excited just looking at the cover previews when I first the very first issue. I wanted to ask you a question about the covers. They seem to have like a color scheme, like the very first one was orange, like very Halloween colors. Then the second one, this one is like a tan. Is that something that you're consciously doing? Like each comic has like a different color. This one has like a light blue, and then I see one of them is green coming up. I think that's the Gorilla Suit Maniac has like a green.
The Gorilla Suit Maniac has more of an orange.
Each one has orange.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then this one has the purple and purple.
So is that part of your?
Yeah, like that one has purple and green. I always
yes.
I'm always trying to think of ways to make each issue, like the cover especially, look totally different from the one before it if I can. I'm trying to think about what's coming up. And then also sometimes with certain story arcs I incorporate some of the same colors, But yeah, I mean I like a green and purple color scheme. I like blue and red together a lot. I like the orange and yellow. I like red and yellow a lot. Haven't really done one like that. The issue 4 had more of a brownish color with orange letters, a logo, I believe. The new one that I'm talking about, the Fall of House of Zagzog pre-order issues are more of a murky green tone with Yeah. So yeah,
Yes, yes, that's the one. I do want to have like a green.
yeah, one of these days I'm gonna figure out how to do a pink one. I think that'll be funny. Haven't quite figured that out yet. Just to weird out the readers. I think that'd be fun.
The Valentine's Day issue,
Right, right, right.
the day. Yeah. Cam says he has that attitude about every comic pro on Twitter. That's a you problem.
Right.
I don't know if you've been seeing this hashtag comics broke me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I started reading it, and then I started getting a little annoyed. And then somebody pointed out, he goes, and I think Pete Sametti jumped on it, said, all the people that are not in the mainstream comic book industry are talking positive. Comics broke me out of my shell. Comics broke me out of like poverty. Comics broke me out of like loneliness and depression.
Yeah.
And then all the mainstream people, comics broke me because of, whatever. And I just had to laugh. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back and read all of these. And like Cam says, these you guys are creating your own misery. Break out of that. I know it's scary to step out. Have you ever had any desire to work for mainstream comics? Like, have you ever tried and were told no, or tried and said yes and then decided against it?
I mean, the desire has been there since I was 12 years old, but the opportunity really hasn't.
Right.
Uh,
Who doesn't want to write Batman or draw Batman?
Oh, believe me. I mean, have you heard about John Byrne doing his own X-Men comic that he's still doing now? Have you heard about that? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, and he just does it to make himself happy and just isn't selling it, so he's not getting sued. I have wanted to do that with a Spider-Man story for ages. I've
Oh, wow.
I mean, I've got a Spider-Man story that I've been wanting to do forever, and I'm just waiting until a time when I'm working, when I'm working in my day job in TV animation, and I'm busy, and the money's coming in good, and I'm too busy to work on my own comics or take a break from my own comics. I'm gonna squeeze that in one of these days because it's nagging at me that I want to do it so bad, and I know they'll never let me, so I'll just do it for free and just put it out there as a web comic.
Right. You're not the cool guy.
Yeah.
You've got cooties now.
Right. Well, I just feel like, I mean, I've even before all.
For those of you who don't know Bryan.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, before those who don't know Bryan's, John Byrne, one of my favorite comic book artists. If you go to John Byrne Robotics, he's continuing. He was my favorite X-Men artist by far. I don't think anybody's going to disagree, or maybe Neil Adams, but whatever. He is drawing and writing his own X-Men comics, but he's doing it. You just go on his website and read it and look at it. And the guy still has talent. The guy's still amazing. He makes a fortune on commission, so he doesn't need Marvel. He doesn't need DC. So he's just doing something to please him. And like Bryan said at the beginning, why are you drawing this? Who's your audience? Well, my audience is me.
Mm-hmm.
Bryan's audience is Bryan. If I ever write a comic script threatening to write about, I want me to like it. So that's what John Byrne's doing. He's living the dream.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Bryan's talking about. And then Cam says you would have fit in Marvel Comics in 73, 74,
right.
on when all of those things and Werewolf by Night was hot. That would have been you hanging out with Mike Plouffe.
I was born a couple decades
that
too
would have
late.
been awesome. Yeah, perfect.
But
yeah,
it is sad and infuriating reading this comment here. It is sad and infuriating that guys like Byrne aren't allowed, because what's more crazy is that Marvel doesn't say, you've done all this work, okay, let's just pay you and let us print it. I mean, why not put it out? I mean, it's there. I mean, gosh, it's crazy that they don't, with all the stupid alternate universe, multiverse nonsense that they do anyway.
Right. And all the movies up until just like the last year or two are all based on Walt Simonson, John Byrne, Jim Starlin stuff, and they won't hire these guys. Jim Starlin's got a on Kickstarter right now, The Inevitable. You know what I mean? Like, why isn't he doing Marvel comics? The guy created Thanos. He didn't create Thanos, but he popularized Thanos. He created Adam Warlock and redid the whole cosmic stuff that Marvel is just mine. Right. And I said this before. Walt Simonson actually went to Marvel and said, "I'm ready for work," and they said, "Nobody wants your art style anymore." Who's lying? Like
who said that?
Who doesn't want Walt Simonson?
Right.
The guy is. Yeah, I want to know who said that and tar and feather,
right?
Old fashioned justice, because we still while Simonson's work.
But there's a long list of
I,
there's a long list of comic artists that I loved growing up that you just wonder, where are they? They couldn't have been that old when, if they were maybe 10 years older than I was when I was reading them as a teenager. Right. Well, where are they now, right? Where's Rick Leonardi? Where's Alan Davis? Where's Paul Smith? Like what are these guys doing now? I don't know.
Yeah, it's just phenomenal. Right. I think it's just Marvel can't afford them.
That's probably true.
And they're gaslighting us.
That's probably true.
Because I just think Marvel doesn't want to pay them, and I know Marvel's still bitter about all the top artists going off and forming Image, and Marvel just made it like an editorial policy to not make rock stars out of their artists anymore, because it was, they got big and then they moved up their own stuff.
Right.
So I can understand it a little bit as far as business is concerned, but like, dude, you could be selling 100,000s a month instead of like, I don't even know, 25,000. They're not selling what. Right now, a hit comic from the big two is cancellation numbers in the 90s.
Yep, that's true.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird, huh?
But I don't think it's so much not allowed to work. I just think they can't afford them.
Well, there is that. Yeah.
Get Brian. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. But when I hear the rates that they pay people, it doesn't compete with what I make in my regular day job. So like, it's like, sounds arrogant to say it, but they can't afford people who are working professionally in the arts. They really probably can't. I know it sounds snooty to say that, but it's just a matter of math, isn't it? It doesn't seem like, I don't know. It's sad. It's sad state of affairs. But yeah, to answer your question, I would
Cam
love
says
to
he's going to see Alan Davis.
I would love to do that if I could, but
you would love to do what? I'm sorry,
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you. I was just answering your original question, which is, yeah, I love all those characters, and I'd kill to draw any stories about those characters. If if they would have me, and if they paid a reasonable rate, who knows?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I think that's what the big two keep doing is they'll get young. It's almost like Hollywood. You get these young starlets, exploit them and then send them on. I think they get like young writers, artists, and like, oh, look at me, you're working for Marvel. Yeah. You'll be able to write your ticket, kid. And now they're all on Twitter like, dude, I've been doing this for 5 years and I still have a small apartment with 6 roommates.
Yeah.
When's the money gonna roll in? Well, it ain't.
Right.
It ain't. Got to make your own stuff. Got to make your own comics. I understand we're not all going to be Eric July, but it can happen.
But
it can happen.
But like you said about the whole thing about how indie comics artists aren't on there saying comics broke me. It's like, when I read some of those things, I was just like, what are you talking about? Just get a day job and do comics on the side. That's what I've done for 20 years. And it's like nobody wants to do that because everybody wants to live the teenage dream of doing comics for a living. But I'm just like, well, actually, okay, so a day job will eat up a lot of your precious comic book making time. Yes. You might have to sacrifice playing video games and watching TV every once in a while to work on your comics. But you know what? Here's the irony that I found, which is the weekly paycheck you get from that day job actually buys you the freedom to make your comics and have fun doing it without the constant stress and worry that goes with the unpredictable sales of them. It's like, I don't know, but nobody wants to hear that kind of common sense.
Right. Yeah, I want my cake and eat it too. But you're absolutely right about the video games and whatever. And they also want to go to the comic conventions and be a celebrity. People kiss their rings. And you got your day job. You could make your comic the way you want. You're not listening to like a staff of editors like I can't think of the correct word, but telling you what to do. Compromise. I couldn't think of the word compromise. You're not compromising. Pete. Does Pete tell you what to do as far as like content?
No.
I already know
not
the
in
answer.
terms of no.
You know,
No, Pete is great about giving us total creative freedom in terms of our stories and our interior page content, and even
right?
letting us design our covers however we want.
Yep,
He will have certain requirements or things he wants to do with the covers sometimes, which I think is only fair because he's a publisher and he knows what's going to sell the book. So he has his needs too, and we
right.
compromise on that kind of stuff. And if he wants to do something that I don't like, I just say it. Or if I do something he doesn't like, he'll say it. But sometimes we bang heads together on some of that stuff. But for the most part, I think we've worked and found ways to compromise with each other pretty well. But no, he doesn't touch my interior. I mean, I can't really say that. I mean, I don't know. I think he probably offers the best deal there is in indie comics because of that creative freedom. His hands off. I mean, you talk to him, he'll say it all the time. He'll say he couldn't look himself in the
That is
mirror
so
if he was messing up someone else's creation and their story, and that's really, that's really commendable. I mean, I really, really appreciate that so much.
yeah. That is
But
because I've been hearing so many stories. You know, okay,
no, I was gonna say, but you made me think of something when you're talking about like the time management of having a day job and also doing comics. Number one, that's just what I'm used to. But I was also thinking, like, I mean, isn't it what all of us indie comics people have been doing since we were like in elementary school? It's like your day job is your school hours, and then you go home from school and draw your little monster stories. like it's the same routine. I just don't. I don't know. I don't feel the sting
right.
of it. Like whatever. It's like I don't know. I don't know what they're complaining about, but who knows? I'm not in their shoes,
Yeah,
so everybody's life
I
is
don't know what.
different.
Well, they they they're complaining because they're starting to realize that they're a bunch of horrible people. Is basically my take. I read this comics broke me, and I'm like, you know, I in my job, I'm a construction
Right.
worker. I'm an electrician, and when the jobs start winding down, people get laid off.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. And then
That's
you go back,
it,
you go back on the list. Maybe you a little bit of
that is
time,
exactly how the animation industry
and then
works.
one form is right. One of the form, yeah, I guess the cartoons get canceled or what.
No,
I don't know.
no,
But the
the
foreman told
TV
me the hardest part of the job is picking who's going to
the
get laid
the
off.
TV season ends.
And he says he gets rid of. Oh, I see what you mean. Oh,
Yeah.
it's different.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's the same. It's exactly. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
he's
I don't
yeah.
mean to interrupt you, but it's just funny you say that because it's the
Oh,
same
yeah.
scenario.
Let me finish this point. He said that when it's time to pick who's going to get laid off, he picks the guys like you may be a good worker, but you're poison. You're complaining. You're miserable. You're driving people. He gets rid of those people first. Then people who are late. Then people. But that he goes. I would rather have a bunch of happy guys that we could get along together. We could work. And I feel like the comic book industry is missing. You got to get rid of the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
You want flowers.
Mm-hmm.
The weeds will strangle your garden. I don't care if you fertilize. I don't care if you water it. You got to get rid of the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I read this comics broke me, and I'm just like the whole industry has been taken over by weeds. So that was what I was going to say.
Yeah, but it's funny it's funny how you mention
But I didn't know that. So
but yeah, I mean my day job is exactly the same way. We have a job while we're working on the show, and when the season is over, the job is over and everybody gets laid off and you take a couple months off. And I'm fortunate I have an agent who her job is to then find me my next job. And in a good year, there's usually not a big gap in between, and it's sort of a little vacation, and then I can focus on my comic books or commissions or whatever I want. And then the
okay.
next season comes up, and she finds me a job on the next show, and I do the next job, and so we're in a dry spell right now because of the whole writer's strike thing. I don't know if you've heard about that, but that's not been
Yeah,
helping this year. But
yeah.
this has been a bad year for that. But yeah, that's basically how it works. It's just like what you're talking about. Nobody ever gets fired. They just don't get
So you mean you
rehired.
tell this time off? You're not just playing video games all day long.
Oh, hey,
That's always my pet peeve is when I see people like complaining about that they can't pay rent, and then their very next tweet is just like you know, I don't even know what the next video game is. I got a high score in this, and this character's. I'm like, dude, you can't. You just said you can't pay rent, and now you just admitted you spent 20 hours this week playing this video game. You know, get a side hustle.
Yeah, I mean, look, hey, I'll be honest. I love
definitely the old man's coming out.
Right. No, I love video games.
Me too.
But
I love sitting and reading comic books.
But I somehow I managed to avoid that addictive thing that some people have where they play them for hours and hours and hours and hours. I'm actually pretty content to just play a video game for like an hour or two every evening after dinner, and then stop and go do something else and work on my comic book or whatever I want to do, or put the kid to bed or whatever I do.
Yeah.
You know, so it's in moderation, you know.
Oh, speaking of your child, I saw you post a picture. She's drawing her own comics now too.
Yeah. I mean, she used to say she was drawing stories, but then she started getting the Dogman books. I don't know if you've seen those, but anybody who says comics are dead is completely wrong. Anybody who says kids don't read comics is completely wrong, because these Dogman books that you get in these little hardcovers at, you know, Target or Walmart or any of those places, my little 5-year-old will read them and read them and read them over and over and over and over. And there's several volumes, and she just flies through them and rereads them again and again. And they're comics. They're drawn with like kiddie drawings, but it's panel to panel, word balloons, thought balloons, captions, the whole deal. So comics are not dead. It's just that's the form that they're in, and those books are super successful. But yeah, so anyway, so she got addicted to the Dogman books, and now when she draws her little stories, she calls them comics. And it's really weird because I swear I didn't pressure her into it. I didn't turn her into this. I wasn't trying to create a little comic book artist carbon copy of me or anything like that. She kind of just naturally kind of went into it herself. But yeah, but I have to say those Dogman books have given me hope that the future of comics, there's still something there. You know, there's still something alive. It's still kicking. Just not in a way. It doesn't look like what we remember.
I've said many times. Yeah, it's right now. There's a transformation. In 5 years, I think there's going to be a fundamental difference. There has to be. Mm-hmm. Comics can't continue the way they're going. I'm talking about the main.
Yeah.
I think one of the main problems is lack of all ages comics. Like my sister has 5 kids, and every once in a while, like one of them will pick up a comic, and they'll struggle through the first couple of pages, and they're gone. They're lost. Mm-hmm. Like, can you imagine a 12-year-old kid just picking up, boy or girl, picking up new X-Men right now, and like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. You know, it was Jim Shooter, and I think Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. They all said every comic book is somebody's first issue. You know, and I think that's an art that's lost. And I'm a big fan of all ages comics. Mm-hmm. I think comic books, you know, we kind of forget that prior to like I'd say 2000, all comics were all ages comics. You know, and look at all the wonderful comics that we had. We had Dark Phoenix, we had the Teen Titans. You know, we had Galactus, and these were for little kids and adults. You know, Doctor Strange. You read those Ditko's Doctor Stranges, that was like a cosmic saga, and that was written for 14-year-olds, you know, and we're still talking about them now. Like, I don't know, you try to pick up a new mainstream comic, and it's too dense, you know, it's too self-indulgent, and little kids, I've seen it. I've seen little kids look at them and, all right, let's. I tried. This isn't good. You know,
I think, you know, like
whatever.
Marvel.
This doesn't look like.
I feel like Marvel and DC would be better off if they stopped making new stuff and just reprinted the old stuff. You know, I mean, hell, half the MCU movies are inspired by the old stories anyway. It's like you're going to get a more accurate representation of what those characters are from just reprinting the old ones, and kids would like them more. I don't know. It's a weird thing. It's weird, but
yeah. Who was Dan Didio, who formerly of DC? He was getting all pissed off because his reprints of older DCs were selling better than the new comics. You know, they were doing like facsimile editions. They were like only a couple of dollars and he said that they were selling like over 100,000 copies a month of comics that came out 20, 30 years ago. And he was getting mad. And what do you get mad at the audience for? You know, that's what the audience wants. How about you return to more? Creating comics that feel standalone and part of the huge. Yes, Cam. okay, thank you, Cam. You articulated what my crazy brain was trying to ramble around. I love the shared universe. I love you know, like Wulf and Batsy, perfect example. There's stuff going on. There's stories that contain from there's a through line through these series. It's not like every issue Wulf is meeting Batsy for the first time. But I could pick up any individual issue of Wulf and Batsy and read it, enjoy it without being overwhelmed. And that I think is key. I think that's like Unit 44, another alternate comic. Every issue, I could just give that to anybody.
Yeah.
They're not going to have the history of what happened issues before, but you don't need it. But then when you do get all the issues, it's fun. I think that is a lost art. You can't read this Krakatoa X-Men anymore. It's like reading one page of the Silmarillion, and I'm supposed to know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I really respect the guys that are doing the comics that really are aimed at kids. I just can't quite bring myself to do it because I don't know, my imagination, it's like I just
right.
I'm making. Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't lecturing you.
No, I know. But I mean, it's funny because you look at that and you go, that's
my niece.
What's that? What'd you say? I missed it.
I was gonna say my niece. We took her to see Jason Friday the 13th movie, and I'll never forget. She was sitting with a bucket of popcorn that was bigger than her. She must have been like 11, and my sister, her aunt goes, "Is Madeline okay to see this?" And she starts laughing at a kill scene, and another kid goes, "I'm gonna go take a shower." And Madeline, 11 years old, in the movie theater, goes, "That kid's toast." we realize she's fine, so she can handle Wulf and Batsy. She's fine.
Oh, wow.
Don't worry about that. I didn't even think of that. Well, to me, Wulf and Batsy is an all ages comic. I know there's blood and stuff, but it's not like sadistic. It's not like gratuitous.
Oh,
maybe it is a little bit gratuitous, but it's fun gratuitous.
You're not there yet. Alterna hasn't caught up yet.
Okay.
But no, like
and Cam says King Cryptid is a perfect example of doing.
Right. Yeah, it is. And that's one thing that Peter's always pushing is for more of that type of storytelling. I still seem to do story arcs, but
okay. I want you to finish your thought before I go to Eddie's comment is going to start a whole new discussion. So go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say I really respect the guys that do comics that really are aimed at kids, because I know that really is what the world needs, is comics for kids. but my imagination is just right. I'm more in, like, my inspiration is to make comics that are sort of like, old exploitation horror movies on paper. So I'm a little more demented and warped for that. So if I was trying to do a story that didn't have some kind of lurid, violence and all this kind of stuff, it's like I would just get so bored. like I already do those kind of stories when I'm working for my day job, right? I mean, working in TV animation, I do a lot of that stuff already.
That.
So it's like I have to balance out the good and evil.
Okay, yeah.
so with my comics, that's my playground where I can do my own little exploitation horror movie on paper.
I'm gonna skip Eddie for a second. Cam says he saw Jaws in the theater when he was 8, and he turned out fine.
Nice.
Well, Cam, I know you. I know that's a lie, but let's go with it.
I saw Alien when it first came out.
I saw Jaws in the theater.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I saw Alien. I saw Jaws. My older brother took me to see all the Friday the 13th movies as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Chiller Theater coming out of the ground. A lot of horror stuff. They didn't. You're younger than me, but not by much. Mm-hmm. We weren't babied as kids.
No.
We saw some horrible, and Stan Lee and Jack, they didn't treat us like babies either. Right. They gave us some hard concepts. They gave us some difficult concepts, some deep philosophy, and maybe I didn't get it at first, but all ages doesn't mean stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck Dixon famously says that little kids are a hard audience. They can detect bullshit a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be genuine.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of agree with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Comics today are aimed at the writer in their interest. Yes, but that's not too bad if the writers are normal people. Brian's a father. Bryan has a wife. He's buying a house. He's doing what normal people do. Jack Kirby was a normal person. I don't think that I think that these writers today in the mainstream are pod people. Somebody said in an earlier comment, I kind of skipped by, they don't human too well.
Yeah.
I see some of their reactions, and I'm honestly flabbergasted. Like somebody will say something honest on Twitter or whatever, and I'm just like, how did that get taken so wrong? These people are they're weird. Maybe we were taking. Oh, there you go, Bryan. There's a comic book idea for Wulf and Batsy. The whole industry was taken over by pod people or aliens, and Wulf and Batsy only finds out when she goes to suck an editor at Marvel Comics blood, and it's green potassium based.
Right.
Yeah, Bryan asks, he says, a little off topic, but what are your thoughts on digital art and the use of AI in creating comics?
I don't know. I don't even really have an opinion on that. I think that's one of those things where it's so in the early stages and it hasn't really. It'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out in 10 years. Let's put it that way. I think we're too much at the beginning stages of it.
Yeah, I think there's a panic. I think there's a panic now with good reason, because people, I'm in the construction industry, and we see some of these buildings. Oh, we'll build a building in a week coming from China with these modular things, and we're all terrified about that. You only need one electrician for an entire building. We're out of work. So I understand the knee jerk reaction. It's a human, visceral, honest reaction, but are people reacting? Well, I'm not a comic book artist, so I don't know. I'm not, I don't know, but it just doesn't look right.
Yeah, I mean,
talk about not human well.
Here's what
AI art, and it doesn't look right.
I've seen a couple of different accounts on Instagram where these guys are doing really weird stuff with AI. Where there's a couple of them where I can hate the way it's done and in theory, but I can't deny that looks cool. That's the problem I run into. But here's the thing. I also have seen how it looks before a real artist goes in there and starts cleaning it up. Like the immediate results you get are a mess because
Right.
the computer just doesn't understand what it's making. But then you get somebody who's really talented and knows how to create imagery and work with digital tools will go in there and manipulate that mess into something that hangs together better and looks really satisfying. So I think, I don't know. Like I said, I just think it's way too early. People are way too excited about it and way too scared of it to really know. I don't have an opinion on it. I think it'll be interesting to see what's like 10 years from now.
There's an artist, Tim Malloy. I see him on Instagram, but he was one of the first people I saw doing digital art. And I got to say, I'm fascinated by it. It's really cool. The whole premise is that he's a guy who receives transmissions from another dimension. And he's just broadcasting pictures of a non-existent television show.
Yes.
Like something, the Golden Child. Yes. And it's like a horror Western Mobius thing.
Yeah.
And I love it. I
exactly.
absolutely love it. But I don't think he's making any bones about what he's doing,
Yeah.
He's not trying to trick anybody. But I'm sure he's also cleaning it up.
Yeah, I'm sure that he is.
It looks like real.
I'm sure that he's.
Oh, you're familiar with the same artist?
Yes, I follow that account also, and it's the exact same thing. It's like, I don't like the idea of the way this was done, but I can't lie to myself. That's awesome. That looks cool. So maybe it's a matter of all of us learning how to use those tools.
It looks cool, yeah.
But I think here's what I really think. I mean, my theory is that's going to be probably a production design tool for movies and things like that. I don't really think it's going to affect comics, partly just because I think comics are too complex. Like if you're just making one image to get an idea of what an alien planet could look like for a movie, you only need a couple different paintings until you get the right look. But for a comic book, you got to have the character in an environment. The character is going to do different things. They're going to be in different poses from one panel to the next. You're going to have all different, the story's moving around. There's too many images. It kind of reminds me of like, do you remember way back in the late 80s, there was that comic, that Batman comic that was made entirely with computer rendered images way back when computer imagery was super. Okay. Everybody was super excited about it.
It was all digital look.
Yeah. Everybody was super excited about it when it came out, but it didn't last. And there was also a comic series called Shatter That was all. That was like I forget it. I forget which company put that out, but it was a little independent book. And
First, first,
yeah, yeah. You remember it, Shatter? They made a big deal about that one being all drawn on a
yeah,
computer.
yeah. I hated it.
Y-
I never.
Yeah, but it didn't
Yeah,
last.
it just looked bad. It looked bad.
Yeah. So like
Yeah,
I said, I think
yeah.
it.
It looked like bad 8-bit
Yeah.
artwork.
So I'm trying not to have the knee-jerk reaction to AI art right now. I think we're just it's way too early to even predict how that's going to shake out. But yes, I see the comment there. Batman Digital Justice,
I,
1990.
I,
Right. That's the one I was talking about.
I you probably have better insights than me, but I find it a little bit hypocritical that a lot of these mainstream pros are freaking out about A art when they're using drafting programs to draw buildings and backgrounds, and then just inserting, say, Spider-Man, or inserting, whatever, Batman, and you could definitely see that some of these mainstream guys are just like inserting a 3D rendering of a truck
Mm-hmm.
and a car,
Mm-hmm.
So how far off?
See,
Like
that's a different
when I
thing.
look at these eerie comics and these creepy comics,
Mm-hmm.
I see a guy drawing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a different thing though. Because okay, so when I worked on Transformers, the animated Transformers series, from 2010 to 2015, I believe, no, 2014, whatever it was, I was introduced to a program called SketchUp, which is free Google software. Anybody can get it, but it's well, it might not be free now, but it was then. Anyway, it was a very basic 3D um, art kind of program where you can, with simple geometric shapes, you can build complex backgrounds. And the reason they were using that was because they were building these 3D environments because they were very complex. They were all these robotic environments, had all these little parts and things going everywhere, and they wanted us to be able to have our characters in there and be able to look at it from any angle and always have the perspective correct for the storyboard. Okay, so you would get the 3D model of the
Right.
environment, you'd turn it to find your camera angle that you liked, screen capture it, put it on your storyboard panel, and then draw the character in front of that environment, whatever he's doing. So I liked that a lot. I was like, because I've always sucked at perspective, I'll be honest. It was always one of my weaknesses, drawing. So I thought, if you took that program and built a 3D environment and used it just as a template and put it on your comic book sketch page layout and drew over it with organic inks so that the lines aren't perfectly straight, so that you can put in surface texture and detail in there and make it look like an organic pen and ink drawing, but your perspective is correct because you're following this map. That is a valuable tool. And I did do that on a few of my comics. And it just solves so many problems and helps you find camera angles that you might not have thought of on your own. So that is a digital tool that I have used, and I don't make any bones about it, because it was a really great creative tool where I still had to build my own environments. I wasn't grabbing them off some menu or anything. I had to still build them in 3D. So the structure was all my digital construction, but then I used that as a template to draw original pen and ink drawing over it. So you know what I'm saying? So it still looks like an organic pen and ink drawing, but the understructure and the perspective is there and it's correct. So you don't have to do any guesswork. So that's a modern way of doing things. But I know what you're talking about, where you're saying there are places in modern comics where they're just grabbing a 3D model of a truck and putting it in there and then just basically putting an outline around it
Right.
and then drawing around. Yeah, you can call that cheating. I understand that. But I feel like if you had to build that truck yourself and make an original design, I wouldn't be so down on that.
Yeah.
To me, that's just taking advantage of the
That's
technology.
okay. Like, I'm glad right. I'm glad I asked you that question because you clarified, because I didn't even know. I'm not an artist, obviously. So you clarified that for me. Yeah. Because I was under because I've seen there's a famous panel where they obviously just did a bathroom because the bathtub is in front of the door. You know what I mean? And how this got by an artist,
Right.
and I forget who it was, Jessica
Yeah.
Drew or whatever, is combing her hair, and you're like, and I just remember this going around, like, is this your bathroom?
Yeah.
There's a bathtub in
Yeah.
front of the door.
Yeah.
Like, that to me is just a misuse of these programs.
Right.
And Eddie says AI art looks awesome. yeah. AI art. It's a just like AI chat box. It just doesn't look right.
Yeah, I
You
think
know,
it almost requires an artist to go in there and
I
paint
get
over it to make it work, to make it look like anything good.
right, right, right. I agree. It's funny because in my business, I was just talking with my wife about this the other day. When you go to Manhattan, I don't know how familiar you are with Manhattan, but if you go down to lower Manhattan, say like the Wall Street
Mhm.
area, you're going to see these buildings that are just works of art, like just there's gargoyles and there's
Mhm.
faces. And um, when they built these skyscrapers, when they were originally built, nobody was going to see the roof.
Mhm.
And then here I am working in towers next to it, and I'm looking, and you'd see like wonderful, like literally altars by like these Freemasons. They put like pagan altars hidden in the tops of these buildings. When those break, we have to go to Italy and Greece and get masons to repair them because we
Wow.
don't have people trained in that anymore.
Mm.
And I wonder like what, again, I keep bringing up eerie and creepy, and like Nestor Redondo and Al Williamson and all these great, like these guys. I know in that Vampire Tales that we talked about earlier, there was one I just stopped and talked about the atmospheric backgrounds
Mhm.
of one of the artists,
Mhm.
and that was all hand drawn by master drafts. And I wonder, is that going to be lost now? Like me myself included, I could draw. I was going to say halfway decent, but I'll say quarter decent Spider-Man,
Mhm.
because that's what's sexy and fun as a kid, draw the human figure in action. But I can't draw a car. I can't draw a guy turning a doorknob. I can't draw wrinkles in clothes. And I wonder, is that going to be like a lost art in the future with all the computer stuff?
Well, I mean,
I know.
well, I mean,
I'm waxing
yeah, I
philosophical.
know what you're talking about, but like, these kids today, they are doing a lot of that hand drawing stuff, but they're doing it on Cintiqs and on digital tools and using digital painting techniques. I'll tell you a really depressing story. One time this must have been 2015 or 16. It's the last time I worked at Disney. And I was in a storyboard meeting, or no, we were having like just a work party or something like that. And it was me and a bunch of other storyboard artists. And I was one of the older ones by that point. And some of these other people were like 20-year-old kids, uh, and we were all just talking about what we all do outside of animation. And I happened to mention my illustration and stuff like that. And I was talking about just using pen and ink or whatever in a very casual way. And this sweet girl who was probably in her 20s or something, she looks at me like, you actually draw with pens and brushes and inks, like ink bottle? She couldn't believe it because she's done digital
Yeah.
drawing tools her whole life.
Do you do it by candle?
What's that? Oh, right, by candle.
Yeah, you light your candle.
Yeah, yeah. But she was just like, she couldn't believe it. She was like, really? You use like, I was like, are you kidding me? You never have? Like, they didn't make you do that in school? Like, are you crazy? That to me is just bizarre, like how, but so it's like, I think every generation has their lost art, but yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, you look at some of these artists. I was looking at this one comic from the 70s. I think, I forget which one it was, but it just had a random pinup in there by Gil Kane. No, not Gil Kane, Gene Colan of Howard the Duck, just sitting in an office. And it was literally just a one single page illustration joke image of Howard the Duck being silly, sitting in an office environment. But man, the perspective and the detail on the file cabinet and the ceiling and the lights in the ceiling and the desk and everything, it was absolutely flawless. And that's because his generation, they were
Yeah,
trained by real illustrators who were not striving to be comic book artists. They were trying to be magazine illustrators, and you had to be top notch to do that. And they were using drafting tools, and they were using T-squares
right.
and all those like architectural tools and big tables, and all that, triangles and all that kind of stuff, and compasses to draw their circles. They were using all those
Yeah,
kind of tools. That's how they were taught, and they had to nail their perspective and get it absolutely correct. But it's like, then my generation comes along and it's like, well, like perspective was one of my hard challenging things that I took a long time to figure out, and it was one of my weaknesses. And then along comes a tool like SketchUp, where it's like, oh, I could build the 3D environment digitally and then draw over that and have my perspective correct, and it becomes a time saving tool, and my drawing is more technically correct. But I didn't learn how to do it using the old technology, using, I mean, I tried, beat my head against the wall for years using those methods in high school and art college, but like just always struggled with it. And I always wondered if I have some kind of weird perspective dyslexia or something, because it was always such a challenge for me to get that right. Something just was not clicking in my brain to do perspective and complex environments and stuff like that.
You have
So I took advantage of the mod. What's that? What? Sorry.
I said you have persplexia.
Right. Yes. Right.
Make
Right.
it up
Right.
a word.
But then what happens? Along comes this technology that allows me to kind of work around that and get better backgrounds by building them myself in 3D and then drawing over them. So I don't know. It's like there's a part of me that wishes I learned how to do it that old way. But if I had, I wouldn't be doing it for work and I wouldn't be doing it for my own stuff, because it's like there's just an easier way to do it now. You know what I mean?
It's easy. When I was an apprentice electrician, I was working with I was the young beardless guy, and I was working with the bearded guy, and they wanted me to work with him because this guy would lay on the floor, and he walked with a cane. That's how old this guy was, and he would lay on the floor with the T-square, and I would help him with the. He would take out a stick rule. He wouldn't even use like a regular tape measure, and I would lay down on the ground, and he would put marks on the ground, and he would get up and he would draw blueprints by hand, by eye. And the carpenters used to say that this guy was never off by more than a 16th of an inch. And now on the job that I'm on currently, the two 20-year-old guys, and they it looks like an old-fashioned camera, a tripod with a box on it, and it shoots lasers, and then it draws the whole job. And all of they kind of like, it's like computer generated, and then they just go in and fiddle with it, and then it generates a blueprint that we now build a building. All they do is set up a contraption, and I just want, like, I'm seeing it in my profession, how like I'm like, could you draw blueprints? And these guys don't have T-squares, they don't have the triangles, they don't use plumb lines, it's just amazing, so and are they doing it wrong? No. We're building an airport. There's no mistakes. There was nothing wrong with this job, so I can't complain,
And the thing is, like,
so there you go. I'm glad I asked you that question. You gave me a new, you give me a lot of perspective. I'll bring it up later.
Well, no, I was
another thing you changed my mind on.
I was just gonna say, like, that SketchUp tool I talked about, I've used it for certain things, but it's not good for everything. Like there's certain things, like if I was going to draw a cave, like, or a forest, you don't use it for that because that's organic.
Right.
That's where I totally want to just make it up on the page. Right. But for something where it's hard to explain right now because the story hasn't been published yet. But in one of my other Wulf and Batsy stories that has not come out through Alterna yet, it was in my old self-published version before Alterna picked me up. There was an environment where I wanted to create this temple that was just super elaborate. And I wanted to make it a crazy playground with multi-levels for the characters to move around on in this story. And to do that and get that perspective right, if I'd tried to hand draw that or do it with T-squares or do it the way they taught me in drafting class in high school or in structural drawing in art school, it would have took me a million years. And I would have got it wrong and had to beat my head against the wall to try to get it right, because that is just a weakness for me. So, but with this SketchUp tool, I was able to build that set in a 3D digital space, and then, like I said, screen capture it, choose my camera angle, screen capture those, lay them down on the comic book sketch page, put that on my final page, and just the lines are there for the structure, and then I go over it with ink and texture it and make it original. You know what I'm saying? So that saved my butt, in something, and it allowed me to do something bigger and more complex than I would have been able to do on my own. So,
cool. That's a great. You explained it. You explained it. I'm glad I asked you, because I was just thinking like people just push buttons, boop, But yeah, okay, it makes sense. It's just a tool that could be exploited and become lazy. But if you're a craftsman, it's just a tool to use. Cam says, "Look how great the art in Mad and those were just designed to be throwaway humor magazine."
Absolutely.
I took it for granted.
Yeah.
I'm sure you read Mad.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I loved Mad, and oh my God, like I too stupid to appreciate how good that artwork was. Jack Davis, oh my God, those guys were phenomenal artists.
Yeah, the guy that blows my mind is Mark Drucker.
And like Kim, Oh yes, yes, yeah. Oh, amazing. You know, the what you call it, the fold in
Yeah.
at the last page of Mad Magazine when you fold it. I thought that I remember every month I would grab that and I would show my father. You know, I just got such a kick out of it. You know, a whole people in a baseball stadium and then you close it and it's Frankenstein or something like that. I'm like, oh my god! You know, my father always got a kick out of how such talented people.
Do you not see the Mad Magazine influence in the humor in Wolf and Batsy? I mean,
yes, yeah,
just some of the silly jokes and
I definitely see. You know, I see some goofy, some silly humor, and I definitely see the EC influence. You know, the more I'm learning about like two companies I'm learning about actively because I don't know enough. I don't know enough about EC, and I don't know enough about Dell. So you know, but the more I'm learning about EC, the more I see in your comics. I definitely see Mad Magazine. You know, it's a shame.
You know what else is great?
Mad Magazine,
you know,
out of business. I never.
You know what else is great too? If you want for pre-code horror, is the Harvey titles. Black Cat Mystery.
Oh yeah,
Black Cat Mystery, Witch's Tales, Chamber of Chills. Those are amazing. And there's a company in England called PS Publishing that has put all those out in hardcover collections, and they are great. And they are so weird. Like they're from the same era as EC, and they were sort of jumping on that bandwagon of horror comics, pre-code horror comics in the 50s. So they're trying to imitate EC, but the stories, it's like when you read EC, it's like there's these little morality tales, and the stories have a natural progression, and the characters kind of make a certain amount of sense. The Harvey horror tales seem like they were written by maniacs in a padded cell. I mean, there's just the logic of them is just the logic. I mean, you feel like you're reading stories by mad geniuses because the story logic is just wacky, where the character motivations just don't really quite make sense, but everything has this dementia to it that's just awesome. I love those. So I recommend the Harvey horror comics too.
But all I know about the Harvey is like those little cutesy, like Wendy the Witch and hot stuff. You know, Richie Rich is. I didn't even know that these existed now. Oh, what? I gotta get to bed soon because I wake up at 4 a.m. But I wanted to thank you. Bryan and I were talking a couple of days that I'm like laboring over world building, and Bryan said, "Stop with the world building. You talked to me for 2 hours about your story, and you never mentioned the characters." And it you know, and it was like a slap in the face. You're absolutely 100% right. He's focused on the, you know. So I got to thank you for that. You know, that changed. You know, people say old people change their mind. You changed my mind with a you know, a little. Oh, of course, Cam knows what you're talking about. Cam knows so much about comic books. They reprinted Harvey Horrors and trades about 10 years ago, but they're out of print. Yeah,
I got them all.
Of course, Cam. You know, you want to talk music? Cam?
Is he talk? I don't know. Is he talking about the PS Publishing? Because it might have been about 10 years ago that they started with those. But I got them in hardcover when they first came out. They might have done trade paperbacks of them, but I was really lucky. I caught onto that company right when they started. And they started with Chamber of Chills and Witch's Tales and Black Cat Mystery. And what's the fourth one? I always forget the name of the fourth one, but I got them all. They were putting them out one volume at a time in hardcover. And I was ordering them from England. They weren't even available over here for a long time. And then eventually Bud Plant started putting them out, and Stuart Ing, I think, had them too. But oh my gosh, they're so cool. They're so much fun because they're just so demented. A lot of great ideas in them.
You got me something to check out.
Yeah.
All right, but I gotta go have dinner and I gotta go to bed. So I could talk to you for another hour.
That's
or so,
all right.
Unfortunately, you know, as we were talking about day jobs earlier. You know,
yeah.
I gotta pay the bills.
I know.
But you want to take that? You want to say?
For me,
you know, we'll push alternative.com to pledge. And get the new Wulf and Batsy's. You could go to Indiegogo right now. Bryan Baugh.net.
Yeah.
Right? Did I get that correct? Yeah. And I'll put all the links to this. It usually takes like a couple of hours for the chat and everything to boot. Like you could watch it, but it won't have the chat. When the chat boots up, it'll have all the links.
Yeah, you can
everything that we were talking about.
You can put the links in the description too, if you want to do it that way. But yeah, I mean, that's, if you want to support Wulf and Batsy, the best way to do it right now is to go on Indiegogo and look for Alterna Comics August campaign pre-orders, or just go straight to alternacomics.com. They have 2 campaigns going at the same time for the same books, and you can just get the ones you want, or you can get the whole bundle. You can sort of mix and match and get whatever you want. But if you want to support Wulf and Batsy right now, like I said, the more orders we get, the longer I can keep making these comics. So go to either one of those places and pre-order issue 8 and 9. My publisher will love you for it. And it'll allow me to keep making issue 10 and 11 and 12 and 13. So that'd be the best.
Yeah. We all love comics here, you know, and here's a person that loves to make them, you know, by a company that loves to make them, and a company that loves their audience. How surprising is that?
And one
and it's almost shocking.
One more thing I should add is, when you go on alternacomics.com, if you want to pre-order those issues, you can also go into their inventory and order the back issues also to make sure you have everything. So
yes,
if you want to get the old Wulf and Batsy's.
Yeah, the August is I lost track of the numbers. What's going on right now is you're pre-ordering 7 and 8.
No,
and you could go
8 and 9.
All 1 to 7.
Yeah.
Oh, 8, 9. I'm sorry. So yeah, you could get all of the Wulf and Batsy's right now. They're not sold out. You can still pick them all up, and they're wonderful comics. They're a lot of fun.
Yep. Oh, thanks.
Justice Wanda Spectre.
Oh, I can't wait for you to see what happens.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for showing up. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I mean, the comments were just, I couldn't even keep up at one point. There was a lot of fun. Thank you, Camp. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Ward Duke. Thank you, Lacey. I'm trying to everybody who commented. So many people. Bushpan. I'm scrolling down, but then it stops. Michael Williams. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I appreciate it.
Logan Effling, I see.
Tomorrow, I'm going to have another live chat with. What's that?
Oh, I see Logan Effling. I always see him on the Alterna ones. Yeah, on the Alterna live streams.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I've seen you. Thank you. And a couple of people said that they were backing as we were talking. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you so much, guys.
Brian's trying to buy a Gothic castle, and that's not cheap. You know, so you got to buy those comics.
Yeah, and they're extra with the Vampire Brides included.
Yeah, and you need a dungeon where you're actually going to draw.
Right.
I picture you often where you use as a desk.
Right.
But thanks a lot. I got to go, and thank you, Brian, for suggesting this. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
It, man. Thanks for having me. Bye.